Welcome everybody to the 69th, I think it was, FMBug. Yes, just the 69th one, basically. I'm sure you all know the rigmarole. I don't have to say anything to anyone here who doesn't know the rigmarole. Nice to see you, Ronnie. I'm not sure you've been to one of these before, have you? You can shake, nod.
I don't remember this one. No, I've been in so many, so it's hard.
Of course. So we've got a mainly focused on Claris 2023 evening this evening. Coming up to that, a bit of news, plenty of chance to talk about it, express your views, and ask Ronnie and Doug all about it. I think we may as well kick off with Gary and what news he's going to reveal.
Yeah, it's, as I say, it's a light news section, so I will share my screen. Hopefully you can all see this. Fingers crossed.
Got it.
It's good. Okay. So the news. There's not a lot at the moment, but obviously I'm going to start with the obvious one, which is what's on Claris's site at the moment is, if you look at the trending now, there is only one topic of conversation, which is FileMaker 2023. There is a plethora of resources there for people to look at. So if you aren't familiar with what the version is and what it contains and what's in there, go there and have a look. The whole community seems to be chipping in and asking and answering questions, which is great. I have to say, from all of my years working with FileMaker, Claris and everything else, the buzz around 2023 has been quite high. So I don't know whether we will hear about this later, I'm sure, but I'm hoping that's a good thing, that the rest of the industry seems to be getting behind it, which would be a great thing. So it looks good, and have a look and see what's there. But as I say, if you want to get yourself involved, chip in and talk to the community and ask questions and be part of it. Next was a overview of the 2023 platform and the history. Soliant did this a little while ago, and they've updated this to include 2023. So if you want a quick rundown of what's involved, it gives you a lineup of what is in the platform. One useful link that I do like that was on the slide that I didn't have to go hunt around to find it was the minimum spec requirements for the 2023. So it tells you which versions of OS are running and the minimum OS you can run. I didn't realize, but Big Sur has been basically not supported. So if you go to 2023, you can't run Big Sur, which I thought was weird, considering that Apple is still supporting that for another year until November. So, which is weird. So you're getting product updates for an operating system that then is not compatible. But that's Claris's choice to choose to support that or not. That's their choice, so that's fine. Most people nowadays are running Monterey, and if you're running Ventura like me, then you wish you could downgrade back to Monterey because it's awful. But there you go. That's my personal opinion, and I'll talk about more of that in the bar later. Another thing is Claris have announced changes to the certification. So they've changed what they're doing with how they're doing the certification. So all your people that were certified before, there's a thing in there. Well, follow this link. There's a full rundown of it. The one thing I wanted to highlight with it is to earn Developer Essentials, which is the new process for Claris certification, you must have passed the previous certification administered by Pearson's before the end of the year to then get that transition over. So have a read of it. I'm sure the Claris team will update you more on that, of the do's and don'ts and the hows and whys, but needless to say, Penny is looking at that. She's the most qualified person I know of. So she's certified in pretty much every version. I think she missed the very first version of certification. She's certified in every single other version. So this was an interest to her that she wants to keep that going, and there may be an option. So that's good. And as I said, it was a short news thing, so I did say it was a short news. There's the dates of the diary, which is dotFMP is in 2 weeks' time. 3 weeks' time, I think it's 3 weeks' time that's on. And we still got the other one that's in there, which is the German one that's there. And then Pulls and Errors now opened up its registration process. So if you haven't noticed that, go and have a look over there. Camp 2023, and they've opened the registration. I think the registration closes the end of August, so you need to, if you are going to go, you need to get registered beforehand. Okay, and I've saved the best to last. There's always an extra thing is, and I don't want to discuss this now, but we can discuss it later if you want to. What do you think of the new logo? We can have a discussion on it. I'm sure there's some meaning behind it. I'm not quite sure I've fathomed out what it is yet, but I'm sure there is some sort of a meaning behind the way it's done. It's very similar to the circle Claris, but they've just extended 2 bits of it from a design angle to make it try and look like a P. Or an F, I'm not entirely sure which one it is. For Pro or F, I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm sure we'll all discuss whether we like or loathe the new logo, because I'm sure everyone has the most opinion on that, not the functionality of what the new platform delivers, it's more about what it looks like. But we can discuss that later. So little tip for the Claris team, you haven't updated some of your logos on the website to the new version. You've missed stuff and still got FileMaker Pro and still got the old logo, but I thought I'd point it out for you, but I'm sure the team will catch up with that at some point soon. And that's it. That's the brief bit of the news. There'll be more discussions at the virtual bar, which I'm sure will be more open, but that's it. So that's all I have. So short and sweet, as I said. So,
you're not mentioning EngageU.
Sorry, what's that? What was that, John?
You're not mentioning EngageU, Gary.
I wasn't, because I thought Johan was actually going to attend, so I didn't bother.
No, I was going to mention EngageU as
okay, fine.
FMP. Yes, Johan said he'd like to have a chat, but couldn't make it tonight, unfortunately.
I didn't realise.
So I said I'd talk a little bit about EngageU, which I didn't manage to get to. I'm sure there's someone here who did manage to get to it last year. There's certainly been some excellent videos come out of it. This year it's in Antwerp on the 12th to 14th of November. Early discount registration is available, I believe, until the end of July. The other one that's worth mentioning is dotFMP, which again I tried to get to last year and failed. Not going to get to it this year either. That's in June, 1st to 3rd in Berlin. I saw Ian pop up here. I know he's been to both, and I think you have, haven't you, John?
I haven't. So it was Mark.
Indeed, yeah.
Yes. So if anyone would like to talk about them and say how wonderful they are, because I'm definitely going to EngageU, but I'm not going to get to dotFMP, much to my regret. Please jump in and tell us something about them.
If you don't know the site, it's just engage.eu, and the dates are on there. As Jul said, it's in Antwerp, and it's the 12th to the 14th of November.
So how about you, Mark? Since you're there, looking keen, you went to EngageU, didn't you?
I did. I went to both.
Told me you had a great time.
No, it's fantastic. And dotFMP as well, I went to last year.
Oh, cool.
They're slightly different kind of angles. I mean, dotFMP is really just kind of a group of developers just throwing some mad inventor stuff out there, and it's really invigorating as a developer just to kind of to feed off these brilliant brains and look at some of the great presentations there. So Ian, I think you're doing 2 this time around. Is that right?
No, I made that mistake in EngageU last year. I did 2 presentations, so I'm only doing 1 for dotFMP.
Okay.
So
yeah, so I
learned my lesson.
And then the EngageU was a bigger event, and it was more sort of development companies getting together, and it had a lot more engagement from Claris. I think by design, I think Egbert sort of doesn't want, I don't want to speak on his behalf, but I don't think he wants Claris as involved in that one, because it allows us to be a bit more kind of critical if we need to be.
It's the same kind of idea as pause on error, that basically it needs to be a place where we can talk about the issues freely, if there are issues. And
but then Claris did do an event, a presentation at dotFMP, and faced some pretty spiky questions, I think, from some of the developers there. But I think it was really valuable for Claris. I mean, I'll let Claris speak on their behalf, but it felt like there were a lot of good things that came out of it. But I'm going to both because they're really good events.
Christian, I'm sure you've got something to say about them both.
Yeah, dotFMP is more the nerds meeting.
I didn't want to say that, Christian, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's more for the advanced people. And I think EngageU is more general conference, drawing in people from all over Europe with about, I think, 250 people planned. So it will be the biggest conference this year for all of Claris. And I would also mention that there's a conference in Rome. If you like to go, they offer a translation to English. So some presenters will present in English, some in Italian, some in French. There will be live translation to the other languages. So for an English-speaking audience, this would be a chance to visit Rome on a business expense and enjoy some sightseeing and hang out with the FileMaker developers.
What more could you ask? Anyone else? John, do you want to pitch anything about them, or have we done it to death yet?
No, they're just both very good.
Excellent.
Really. Yeah.
Right. Details are on the FMBug website as well as the respective websites for those, not for the Italian one, but Christian, could you send me some info on the Italian one? I'll put it up on the FMBug website if you've got any info.
Yeah, well, I made a blog post recently, and basically currently it's there's a link in the chat.
Yeah,
perfect.
So you have to click then on Inglese and get the English version. So it's basically 1 week of a conference, training, sightseeing, events, gala dinner, and so I enjoyed it last year. It was terrific.
Okay, and then I think we're actually going to be amazingly on schedule, in fact, slightly 2 minutes early. We may as well thank you for everyone who gave their views on dotFMP in various meetings, including EngageU. We will I've got down on my agenda, and we've got a pre-presentation open discussion, first impressions of FileMaker 2023. Just to give maybe Doug just a little heads up as to the direction that people are thinking. I didn't want to go into any specifics in this, but I wanted to give people a chance to just say before they looked at all the amazing new gizmos in a bit more detail and found out what they are, what they feel about it, whether they've had a chance to look at it, and what their feelings are for about 10 minutes, and then we can get on with Doug's presentation. But if you haven't got anything to say, we can go straight on with Doug's presentation. I'm sure he'll be ready whenever we are. I haven't had much of a chance to look at it, mainly because I discovered that most of the servers that I've got up and running are pre-19.4, so I can't access them in Claris 2023. So I haven't really had a chance to road test it yet. But what I've seen, it looks good and looks very impressive. So feel free to pitch in with your views.
That's one of the things I wanted to mention, is the fact that the version you need, I think it's 19.4. Is it 19.4 or 19.42? I don't know which one it is, but so I'm at the point where I've literally, the timing couldn't be better, Claris. Thank you very much for this, but I've just spent about 3 weeks upgrading everyone to 19 client, so I could do my upgrade for my server. And I'm just going to tell the support team to go around and just do the whole of 2023, because I've got 19.42 server already, so I can run it. So they've literally just finished the 3-week upgrade of all the clients. So we'll just push that out and push the new version out. But that's fine. I'd prefer to go to that version, and then I'm going to plan to jump from 19.4 straight up to the new version, and possibly move to Ubuntu as well. So, but yeah, I've seen it from the specification and the information. I've not actually got my hands on it and played with it, but it looks fine. It looks good. I think there's a lot of new features in there that look good, but you'll get all that out of Doug's. But yeah, I I welcome it. I only wanted to mention the only thing I wanted to mention was the freemium version, to bring that up again, because I've had a couple of clients that I've spoken to. I take it the freemium version is going to be supported up to for that version when it arrives fully, because I don't know that it has still, or have I ever missed the boat on that one? No, it hasn't. Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. Thank you, Doug, for the shake of the head. So I thought, yeah, I'll download the 45-day trial, but I thought, no, I'll wait for the freemium version. It's got to be soon, surely, but not quite. So I assume it will be the freemium version when it launches will be 2023, and that's it. We'll push out to that, I would imagine. So. Anyone else had a chance to get their hands on it or look at it yet?
Yeah, I think the best thing is to not name it 19.7, because there's really a lot of people interested in the new version, because they didn't take the 19.1, .2, .3, they didn't take them seriously. A lot of customers are basically jumping from 18 or 19 directly to 20.
That's the weird thing of their release cycle, isn't it? It's the fact that that's what they tried to do with their interim releases. It was just like, well, there's going to be a little, but it wasn't an interim release. 19.5 has got a load of features in it, so but people just didn't understand that.
Yeah, I mean, from a marketing perspective, it's much more clear that it's a step forward compared to the impression you had before, was that there was not a lot changing, while there was a great deal changing and a lot of good things going on, but it just wasn't really clear from the naming.
Still
it's weird if it. Sorry, go on.
Free though, you know, I don't know if you've seen that, but like quite a lot of communications where, you know, like in forums and stuff, where people are calling it FileMaker 23 or FileMaker 20 or FileMaker 2023. You know, there's still, I think, a bit of confusion out there about the numbering.
What the confusion is when you look at the version behind the hood, underneath it, it's version 20.1 or something is the actual, if you look at the actual FileMaker version in the code, it comes back 20.1. It doesn't come up with FileMaker 2023. So I think that's what they've done, is they've lent themselves to that unknown that people get confused. And I think that's it.
My assumption. Go on in.
I was going to say my assumption there was that was to ensure backwards compatibility for how most people test for versions. That if they switch to version 2023, it's probably going to break a lot of people's code when they look at version numbers.
That's true. Yeah, because you think you're expecting a 2-digit number, right? Yeah. It's good though.
Maybe shouldn't, but that's what a lot of us have done.
I don't know that it fixes the mid-cycle, here's another release, which is a dot release, but it's got a load of features in, because you're going to end up having to consider it being 2023.1 or 2023A or something else before you get to 2024, which signals another big kind of yearly thing. So I don't know it fixes that problem in the shorter term of people taking up when there's lots of new features like in 6 months' time.
I think people need to readjust their thinking about the dot releases in a way, because I think Claris's principle now is to release technology as it comes online, as it comes available to us. So there may well be bigger releases than there would have been before. So there will be jumps in the dot releases, and I think we've all got to get used to that fact and not think of them as just small increments, which will take a bit of time, but I reckon in a year or two, people will have that view.
Do you know why? Does anyone know why they made it so you can only connect with clients there? You know, there's like you can only connect to from 19.4 upwards, right? It just seems like a kind of limit. I don't know why that's. I don't know if there's a technical reason why they've done that, or is that a marketing reason? It just doesn't seem like it's giving a great deal of flexibility for people who are on like just earlier versions of 19 or whatever.
I think maybe that's a more technical question that we can ask in a bit. Hopefully he'll have an answer for us.
He does. Thumbs up. Excellent. That doesn't bother me really in that respect, because I think I've always gone down the route of we should have a duty of care to get people on the later versions for security reasons, support reasons, If you're running technology that's 5 years old, or any company's running technology that's 5 years old, you really want to look at it and consider it. It's just like most people are running Catalina, for example, and Catalina was end of life as of November last year. So there's no security updates for Catalina. So if you're running anything Catalina back on an OS point of view, you should stop straight away. I think that was only born from the recent Apple release. That A release they've just fast-tracked was a massive WebKit problem, and it affected every flavor apart from tvOS and the watch, but everything else got patched, and there's a reason for that. So anyone that's running old versions, it's a concern. So
yeah, but 19.3 isn't 5 years old, is it?
No, that's true. That's very true. That is very true. But I'm sure Doug's going to tell us the reason why. That's true.
Anyone else got any first impressions they want to just throw out there? No. In that case, if you're ready, Doug.
It's not a sorry,
on,
not so much a first impression, just a request for a feature that Doug could perhaps touch upon if he's not going to, and that is on FileMaker server the setting for the Nginx load balancer. If you weren't going to touch on that during your talk, if you could, that'd be great. That's what I want to comment. Thanks.
Okay. Any more?
No, I think we've exhausted it, Joel. We're done.
I think we're done, I think. In that case, if you're ready, Doug. Go.
Cool. Evening, everyone. So before I forget, I'm just going to answer your last question regarding the versioning number. I can find it. So the reason we call it it's FileMaker 20, the product version in 2023. The 2023 is just a marketing name for the current sort of launch plan that we have. 2023 will never be basically a product version because the version name, the minimal length is basically 20.1, 20.2, 20 whatever. But the full name, basically what they're using inside the code is the product version plus the manual release. So for example, 17.1, the version number inside the code is 1701 or 1710. So 2023 is actually 20.2.3. So 2023 is just a product, is just a marketing name. It's not a product version we'll ever use, which is confusing for people calling FileMaker 2023, FileMaker 23, like Jul Carson is doing it. We know it because it's just the way people sometimes talk, but that's just the way it is for time being.
It just so happened that the calendar fell in the year of release, so you added it as a marketing thing. So next year, this will all be gone because it'll be 21.1 and in 2024. That's where you're going with this, I assume. Potentially.
Potentially.
Yeah, I see where you're going with it. It's fine. Okay.
Never talk about the future, you know me. So I'm going to share my screen. Sound. So hi everyone. Yeah, all good. Cool. So hi everyone. I'm Doug Wallis. I'm the product marketing. Product manager for FileMaker. With me tonight we have Rosemary TG from the community team, and then Ronnie Rios from the PM for the Connect side. So we're going to talk about FileMaker 2023, otherwise known as FileMaker product version 20.1 time being. So what have we been working on the FileMaker world, and pretty much a lot of work done by the Claris. So the idea of FileMaker 2023 or product version 20 is to keep on growing and continuing what we've actually done since the launch of FileMaker 19, which is almost 3 years ago. Right? The idea behind it is we want to make basically FileMaker a very open platform so that we can attract more developers to the community who don't actually have to start learning FileMaker from scratch, but actually can actually leverage the knowledge that they have from other platforms that they know, on the other code that they might be using on daily basis, like namely JavaScript or the stuff like that, and bring in their knowledge in the FileMaker world so that we can actually grow the community. The other thing we've been working heavily is to continue the improvement of the backend or the Draco engine of FileMaker so that it's more resilient, it's more scalable, it performs better for you. And so the work is done both within FileMaker, but some of the work we're doing on Studio and Connect so that we can actually have all of those tools working together to give you an ever better platform. So I was talking before, but basically we've been asking the community to give us some sort of input in what they thought of FileMaker 2023. And the other thing we did, as you'll see from the community, is we've asked actually as partners to create some case sort of studies or blogs entry on how they will use some of the features that we have, so that we give you a feature, but the idea is the case study or the way you could use it in your system comes more from the partners, from yourself versus us, because you could actually bring more of the on the field sort of knowledge to the community. So we're going to start going through FileMaker Pro. We'll talk about server, and then Ronnie will talk about Connect. So on the Pro side, the main feature that we have, the one that everyone's talking about, is the OnWindowTransaction script trigger. John is going to do under the hood sort of demo how he's using it. I'm just going to go basically what it does, how we came about creating it, just to give you an idea. So it came around basically when we were starting working on opening up the interaction between the developer and how they could manage transaction on the FileMaker system. So transaction FileMaker has been there since FileMaker 7, pretty much since 19.6. We've actually opened up a bit more what you can do with transaction. So we have 3 script steps called around controlling the transaction. And on top of that, we thought if we can actually get people to sort of control how they do transaction, maybe we need to actually give them an extra tool where they can actually get extra data when a transaction occurs on the system. So we created a script step. It's on the file, so it basically will run anywhere on the file that has it enabled. It works pretty much the same time as on record commit. So when you're committing basically data from whether it's any type of client to the server, that's basically when the script will actually run. And what it's doing is actually picking out a bit of information and putting all that information into a JSON object. So the information we pick out is essentially the file name, the base table name, the operation that's actually happening. So it could be either a new, modified, or delete, the record ID, and then a field that you select from your systems, and it could be pretty much anything into that. That's basically the stuff that we actually created for the time being. It works both in find and in browse mode, but that's what we give you. I'm sure John's going to get a great example. And we've actually written a blog on our engineering blog that we released with FileMaker 2023, where we kind of give a big example of how you could actually do audit logging, because that's basically the main idea behind it, is how you actually create an easy audit logging so that you can actually track changes in your system. Last 20 years, 25 years, I think there'd be like 30 different ways of actually doing a audit trail system. Some were kind of really hard to do. This is just an easy way for people maybe to actually start putting it into the environment. So John will do more stuff around it afterwards. We've added as well a couple of functions to better support audit logging. So around basically getting the list of the base table names, the table IDs, and then getting the field from the base table name. So kind of reference field basically to make it your life easier for creating a great auditing system. Next one, it's not a new feature, it's an enhancement of a new feature. It's around sending email. So we know people have been using the SendMail script step for ages to actually send emails from FileMaker client or system to the outside. And essentially the 2 ways you could do before was actually either use an email client or use an SMTP server. And Microsoft and Google basically have been deprecating the usage of basic authentication through communicating with their servers through a plain text password. So now you have to use OAuth 2.0 authentication to be able to actually send email from third-party clients through the Google Workspace or the Microsoft 365 business subscriptions. This is the screenshot, of how it looks. Kind of straightforward. Basically, is whether you go for the Google option or the Microsoft options, We ask you the name, email addresses, everything works with the calc engine, so everything can actually be calculated in the background. And we ask you a couple of questions about like the service, email account, private key, a couple of IDs. This is the really straightforward, basically part of the process. What's going to be a bit more of a pain is setting up basically the accounts in the Microsoft Google area where you're going to be able to actually get this private key, the sort of auth IDs and stuff like that. We know it's kind of very cumbersome, it's a bit of a pain, and we are working on writing a blog entry where we're going to try to outline most of the cases and most of the variation of how Google and Microsoft give you this information so that you can actually find it as easy as possible. It's going to be quite a long blog entry. There's going to be screenshots and stuff like that to actually help as much people around it. It's a bit of a pain, but we're going to try to actually do as much as we can to make it easier for you to be able to actually use it. On the other hand, if you don't want to basically go through this page, you can actually use Claris Connect. Because with Claris Connect and how Ronnie is going to talk about the new trigger that we have now, it's going to be a lot easier to send information out to something like Outlook, SendGrid to actually do the email for you without having to worry too much about it. So if you haven't tested Connect, it's going to be a great way of leveraging that in the future. Next one is perform script on server with callback. I know it's a very long name. I know the people are saying, oh, you should have called something different. But basically the idea is that with the name of the script, you're meant to be actually understanding exactly what it says. Mark is going to do, I think, a demo later on. He's going to talk more about it. Quick, basically, bit of info. The reason we actually have perform script on server and perform script on server with callback as two different script steps was to make sure that we could have easy backward and forward compatibility for everyone. So we didn't actually want to break anyone's solution, but we wanted to actually have the freedom to be able to actually sort of take this to the next level without having to worry too much about what perform script on server was actually doing. The other thing that perform script on has is it can do synchronous or asynchronous sort of calls. So you have the option on POSS to be able to actually do wait for completion, stuff like that. We don't actually have the same in this new script step because everything is asynchronous. It's waiting for the server to finish doing the script to actually send back some information to the client to run the script. So they work similar, but there's less option basically in this new one. And it does what it basically says. You get the script to perform a script for you. When it's done, it's going to basically send information back to the client saying, now you can run the callback script. Kind of straightforward, but very useful for a lot of cases. So this is the list of new sort of features, enhancements that we've done. The first one we talk about is security because it's vital for Claris as part of Apple, but just in normal sort of it's vital for us. So now we have support for OpenSSL 3.0.8 across the board. The only version which is still on the latest version of one that's been there is the Ubuntu 20 version because Ubuntu 20 came out before OpenSSL 3. So we pretty much saying is if you're mad about security and you're moving to Linux, go directly for the Ubuntu 22 version. You'll have more updates and everything will be a lot easier to use. We've extended the function of read QR code, so it works properly now on FileMaker Pro on Windows, and it can be used as well on the FileMaker server, both on Windows and Ubuntu. Get live text function is now supported on FileMaker server, and we've added 3 extra languages, which are Japanese, Korean, and Ukrainian. We've done some updates to the PDF generation, especially on thumbnails on Windows. We're using a new third-party tool called the PDFium. That's the name of it. It's meant to be more reliable. It does more stuff for us. And a lot of the work that we do on the PDF side is to be able to actually make sure that in the Windows environment, whether it's thumbnails or in general PDF generation works better. So 2023 is a new stuff that we're doing around it. And is one of the reasons, amongst others, where we are removing basically support for older version before 19.4.2, because we want to be able to actually fix some issues. If we basically support other versions, we're not going to be able to actually fix a lot of these issues. We have finally support for dark mode for duration graph on the macOS. We've added a date format parameter to the execute FileMaker data API script steps, especially when you're doing like cross-language requests. And we've got about 500 bugs that we fixed. We're not going to basically list everything, we've never done that. But if you look at the release notes on the FileMaker, on the Claris website for FileMaker Server, FileMaker Pro, there is a long list basically of bugs that we fix, namely the one that actually are more easy to explain versus just other bugs that will take more time to explain and most people actually haven't really seen in the day-to-day usage. Quick stuff that we updated. This is an area we hadn't really touched for a very long time. We've updated basically the list of stencil when you're creating new layouts so that you could actually have the right sizes. So we added sizes for the iPhone 14 and 13 mini and SE3, and then the iPad Pro 19, not the biggest one, so the smaller one, and then the iPad mini. But I think that, and the desktop version as well for the 1600. So small update, but useful for new users. So there's basically what we support. So we support the last 2 versions of macOS, which is like the policy of our Claris. The reason we're not doing Big Sur is in terms of the usage, it's very minimal. And so most people that basically are running, well, used to be on Big Sur actually either updated to Monterey and Ventura. And then for the Windows version, we support 11 and 10. And we test thoroughly against the 22 second half version of those 2 versions. For the hosting, so FileMaker 20.1 will be compatible with 19.6, 19.5, and 19.4.2, and then Cloud 20.1 when it comes out, which is should be very soon. The 19.2.2 is essentially on the Windows side where we had to do some updates around the web view, the sort of the WebKit of the web viewer, and some other stuff on PDF. So that's what we're basically limiting to that version. Now we're going to move to Claris Server. So I'm going to talk about the admin console, some of the stuff we've done in the background. But essentially what we are trying to do on the FileMaker, and especially the admin console, is the idea is, like I've sent to all the other dev groups, is we're trying to make FileMaker Server boring in terms that once you've actually set it up, once you've actually set up your script schedule, once you've actually set up your backup schedule, your notification, everything you have to do, there is very little need for you to go back into the admin console apart from checking your logs. So we're trying to actually sort of make a system whereby you set it once, everything works really nicely for you, and we take the pain away from having to actually worry too much about sort of looking at it and making sure everything's working properly. So the idea is, on our side, is we do all the heavy work so that at the end of the day, once you've got it installed, FileMaker Server is a boring software. It just runs. It just does its job without you having to work too much about it. A couple of stuff that we've done. So we've increased the amount of host file that you can have on each FileMaker server. So we've gone from 125 to 256, just to make everyone's life easier. Most customer cases, we know basically they're not going to reach that limit, but we have a large number of people doing SBA, so Solution Bundled Agreement, where they offer the hosting for their customers. And so having more files on each server means they can have more client per server, reduces the cost for them. So it makes their life a lot easier. And even in terms of management, it makes everyone's life a lot easier. The next one is about sort of Web Direct. And it comes into sort of 2 flavors. So one of the things that we're trying to do since 19.3 and 4 and stuff like that was actually be able to do 2 things, is increase the amount of users in a Web Direct environment, because we know we have a lot of demand of people saying, I want basically to use the power of FileMaker, but I need to be able to actually have that through a web browser, because installing FileMaker Pro in my environment is really hard to do. So I need to be able to actually do that through a web browser. And so 2 for these, I need more users and I need more stability. And so the idea was to be able to say, is how can we actually do both at the same time, so that we offer you a more scalable and performant system. So to get to 1,000 users, essentially for the time being, it's going to be only on Ubuntu Linux with a Nginx load balancer, is we are allowing the system to actually have more secondary machines. So the idea was not to actually create a newer version of WebDirect where you're going to have 1,000 users on one publishing engine. The idea was we're going to basically allow those web publishing engines to work better together so that each machine can actually sustain up to 120 users at the same time, but in a more sort of performant version, so that the usage is going to be better. So we've done that by extending the amount of web publishing engine you can have, and we've updated the Java that we use from version 11 to 17. There's one question is, why didn't you actually go straight away to version 20? The reason is the work that we had to do just to get it from 11 to 17, and knowing that we don't want to break your solution. So the idea is we want to move forward without breaking your old solutions. We have to do it step by step. And so we moved to 17. That allowed us to do some heavy cleanup of the CSS caching management that we do on WebDirect, so that the pages refresh at a better system with a better rate, so that it doesn't have to actually sort of keep on getting the new cache from FileMaker server every time. And it's allowed us to actually do some stuff that I talk about later on around garbage collection. On top of that, we've now supporting version Ubuntu 2022, both on the Intel and the ARM processors. So it gives you a pool of area of hardware that you could use. And on top of that, once we have the Claris server newer version that supports the FileMaker 2023, you'll be able to actually, through virtualization, install Claris server on Linux on the Mac Mini, and you'll be able to use any of the numerous virtualization tools out there, and the process will be straightforward. We've updated as well Node.js to version 18, so that it makes the admin API and data API works a lot better, and the admin console will have a better refresh rates of the notification or the updates, so that it's less prone to basically crashing when it's doing mini sort of sync of the data internally. And we've enhanced the logging and notification. We've added 2 new logs, one around script event, and the other one is around the script engine, script errors that can happen when the system's running scripts. So this is a screenshot of the FileMaker server running more than 1,000 connections on the system. We've done a bit heavy testing, so we could actually kind of get to 1,000 or 1,050. But basically the way it works is you'll have up to 10 secondary machine connecting to your primary machine, where they'll basically be spreading the load. So once you've actually got the system, your primary machine will not do any of the web publishing work. So you'll basically have to turn it off, and then your 10 machine will actually do all the work behind it. And on top of that, you'll have an engine load balancer URL, and that load balancer basically is going to send the traffic to all the secondary machine. Again, we have a blog entry that actually goes through the steps, but following Ian's questions, I'll go through just to see whether we have enough information on how to set up the Nginx. If we haven't got, then we'll probably work on one to actually sort of give more information on how it should be set up for people to actually start using it. So on average, once you got everything on Ubuntu 22, you will get between 100 to 120 connection per server, and that will be able to actually stabilize that. If you don't need 1,000, and if you're looking to get 200 or something like that, you can actually use just 2 machines, and the stability is going to be better. So even on one single FileMaker server that is running the web publishing engine, you on a Mac or Windows, you'll easily get 90 to 100 users, and there will be stable connection. I know that before that, even though we say you can get to 100, sometimes when you were getting to 90 or closer to 100, when you had that ghost session, the system wasn't working properly. Now, basically, it's going to work a lot better for you. So even for small deployment, the whole system will work a lot better for everyone. Next one is a new feature that we've added. It's kind of under preview. So it's there, it works. We might do some changes. We might extend it a lot. So we put it on the preview, it just says, play with it. It's not going to go away. It does what it's meant to be doing, but there might be a lot of new features that we add to the next version. So it's not a final sort of product. There's going to be other stuff added. So persistent caching basically is a way for us to actually avoid, well, most of the time, database corruption or data losses if the FM server D process actually crashes. We know that sometimes when it crashes, when people are writing data, you might actually lose a bit of data. And so the way we've done it is we are splitting the cache that your FileMaker server is using into 2. So if you've assigned currently a 1 gigabyte cache to your FileMaker server environment, it's going to split that into 2. And it's basically going to create 2 of the same in two different areas. So the FileMaker normal cache and the persistent cache, which basically live outside of your FileMaker server. So the normal cache lives inside the FM server process. And if that crashes, you lose that cache. Persistent cache will actually be saved in RAM. And so for as long as basically your RAM is alive, you would be able to actually sort of retrieve that information. So if a FileMaker server crashes, you restart the server, FileMaker server is going to check for that persistent cache and actually be able to identify with that extra information. If you want to be extra safe, there is an option to save that persistent cache to the disk. That's actually if you have a power outage or the whole system sort of goes completely dead. That's going to have a small performance hit on your system because FileMaker will have to do 3 actions. So it's going to have the normal cache, the persistent cache, and then copying the persistent cache to the disk to be saved. So it's going to have a bit of a hit. It's not massive. It's roughly about 5%, but just be aware that it's there. We've actually disabled it by default. If you want it, you just enable it through the admin console or the CLI or the admin API. It requires a quick restart, and that should be fine. And alongside that persistent cache, one of the things that we've added as well is a quick server restart. And this is a long-term project that we have to make updating your FileMaker server easier than it currently is. So we've made some big efforts with 19, whereby you could just basically shut down the FileMaker servers, run the update. It will the server will just pick out all the information that you already have. It changes the backend to the third-party tools that we use, and then restart, and you have done everything, and all your settings are in the same location, same place, so everything is working properly. But we know that the pain is you have to basically get your users offline, you have to shut down your server, run all the process. And so the quick start server basically that we've created is a quick way for the server process to be actually stopped and restarted really easily. So the long-term plan is that we have is to make it easier for people to update FileMaker server straight from within the admin console. So without having to actually go to the SD page, download the installer and do all the processes. The idea is how do we make it a lot easier to actually that. So it's going to take a bit of time. It's not going to come in the next 6 months, but this is basically the plan and what we're trying to actually get out of that. Next step is something that actually will please John, I imagine, is we've updated the OData API. So now that basically it's compliant with the latest version, which is 4.0.1. And we make it easier to actually manage related entities through OData. And now you can do some deletes and patch and posts through those related values, very useful, and basically opens up a lot more stuff that could be done on the OData environment. So if you're not using OData, well, the best person to actually ask is John, because he's used a lot of that, but it's something that actually is really useful to be able to actually manage your FileMaker sort of files quite easily from the outside. And there are a lot of new developers coming to the FileMaker world that will actually access FileMaker data through the API. There's a lot of stuff being done by the Apple Academy in Naples, where we have students that basically work on project. They use basically OData all the way to pretty much in a lot of the work that they do, because they need a data warehouse to be able to actually host their iOS apps. And for them, FileMaker and OData is the cleanest way to be able to actually gather data from a FileMaker server and use that in the iOS app they're creating. So very useful for this type of new developers in the market. So next one is around this Java garbage collection I was talking earlier. So we know that Java crashes a lot, and it has an issue that sometimes it takes a huge amount of memory from the system, and it doesn't know how to let go. It's like clinging onto its kids for no reason, and it's creating an issue because sometimes the footprint of a Java process is taking all the RAM that you have in your system and makes your whole system sort of about to crash. And so this garbage collection system is a system script that you can run on your server that's going to allow basically the Java process to be cleaned and to remove that memory footprint. So you can run it manually, or we've got some script schedule. You can run it on the primary machine or the secondary machine. And it is going to require that you have Java 17, so the JDK installed on your system to be able to actually run. The one thing that we make sure that if you have multiple versions of Java running on a system for whatever reason it can be, we only modified when you do the install the FileMaker 2023, the Java folder that is inside the FileMaker server. So anything outside it, we'll basically leave your own without touching it, but everything in the FileMaker server environment will be updated. We have a blog entry, a one for that as well, where we go through the 4 different type of garbage collection that we actually have implemented in this script schedule. You can go through it. The one that we use is called a G1 garbage collection. It's a simple one. It's the basic one, but basically it's just going to remove the footprint from Java, does a bit of cleaning, and basically sort of gets everything work properly. Go through the blog entry. It explains everything around garbage collection and the 4 different ways that you can actually sort of do it depending on your needs. So some are really quick, other takes more time just to make sure that the memory is cleaned properly. But basically we've done that so that it offers you the most amount of easiness for you to use. Next one, so it's not a it's a preview because we just put it in there, but basically something that's been there for a long time for the other platforms. But basically now you have support for Active Directory, for Ubuntu via directory services. So we just want to make sure that people that actually use Ubuntu can actually integrate properly with Active Directory systems that could actually have. To set it up, it's basically through the admin console, kind of straightforward, and then you can actually use your external group for the admin console signing, database signing, and the admin roles that we've added as well. Extension of the backup settings as well. So we gave you the option to cancel properly backup in 19.6 or 5, I remember. One of the option was basically, one of the feedback that we got from the community was, can we have a way to be able to actually keep those cancel backups? Because there might be a reason why we want to keep it. It might have been started by the system and we had to stop it because whatever reason, we were manually started, and we want to make sure that if someone starts a manual backup and stopped it, we have a way to be able to actually track it. And so we'll basically, you can actually keep those backups. They are saved in the preserved folder, if I remember right. And you'll be able to actually get to it. And the name is basically will be called canceled, and then the date, and then you can actually have access to that, like the other backups in the system. So this is the overview of all the sort of new stuff that we actually have on the FileMaker server. Some are actually sort of minor bug fixes, but requested by the community for a long time, like the name of the schedule names. They were limited to 32 characters before. Now we've actually increased that to 200 characters. We've added a Docker script for FileMaker 22 in the FileMaker server/tools folder. So you have all the various sort of scripts that we offer, so like for Dockers, for Ubuntu 2022, as well as the Python script for doing the primary key access, the server, and as well as the data migration tool on Ubuntu, for Ubuntu that's saved in that folder. We've added as well a new option to save as PDF through the data API. So you've got the 2 new log entries for script event sort of management. And we've added as well the option to import admin groups for FileMaker 7 Server 16. So we pretty much everything that was in FileMaker Server 16 that had been put in there since then has been put. So basically is saving all your settings on a very old FileMaker Server 16. You can import pretty much everything now into FileMaker 2023, and it should all work properly. When I say should, there might be some issues. If you have issues, go through customer support. They'll be able to actually sort of help you just to figure out exactly where the issue might be coming from. But that should be all cool for you. And I think in the Ubuntu script folder as well, you might be able to find some information about the NG load balancer, but I'll double check on that. And then next up is the tech specs. So for the server side, same as the Pro side, we support the last 2 versions of macOS, so Ventura and Monterey. For the server on Windows, it's Windows Server 2022 and 2019, both requiring a desktop experience. Ubuntu, we support Ubuntu 20 and Ubuntu 2024, but if you want to use the ARM version, it will be only on version 22. And then for the clients, it's 20.1, 19.6, 19.5, and 19.4.2. So if you have all the systems, you can use 2023. at least either move directly to FileMaker 2023, or at least try to actually have one of the latest for 19 on that system. For the Ubuntu side, we support both the server and desktop, but strongly recommend just using the server side, as a desktop basically is going to use a bit more memory from your system, and there's no really need to actually have a desktop environment. And now I'm going to basically hand over to Ronnie so they can talk about Claris Connect.
Thanks, Doug. All right, let me share my screen. Awesome. All right, I only got like 3 slides, but I think they're really good. So let's go through it. All right, so let's start by giving away some software. So we've actually introduced, with the launch of FileMaker 2023, a free plan, a free tier of Claris Connect. So if you've never tried Claris Connect, never had opportunity, you have no excuses now. And it's fully featured. We have no, there's no limitations other than just the amount of calls you can make on a monthly basis, but it's feature-wise, connectors, everything is included. So you've got complete access to the entire Claris Connect product, all the features allowing you to integrate your existing solutions with the rest of the world. And that's really what the kind of point of Claris Connect. We want to make sure that give you the ability to create very powerful integrations with your solutions and have it talk with the rest of the world, and as easy as possible. Right? We take care of a lot of those things, but one of the things that we're, when we're asking customers, what's the biggest challenge you have with integrating Claris Connect with FileMaker? Right? We've had FileMaker connectors from the very beginning, but what are your biggest challenges? And over we kept on hearing, well, trying to trigger a flow in Claris Connect from FileMaker, and understandably why. There's several steps to make that happen. You have to use the insert from URL script step. There's a URL. There's a specific JSON object that you have to create. You have to send over. And if you miss on just one little thing, just last week, one of our tech writers made a very minor, just 1-letter typo in the curl options, and it wasn't triggering their flow just because of that one typo. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So what we're doing is that we're introducing a new script step in FileMaker specifically designed to trigger Claris Connect flows. And it's aptly named, right? Trigger Claris Connect flow. So this script step makes it a lot easier for you to trigger those flows directly from the FileMaker scripting environment. And this is actually a script from one of our partners doing integration with an API in the traditional sense, using curl, using insert from URL script step, and it just like we normally do. You have to manage all the manage the credentials, the sending over, the error management, and all this fun stuff. And he took, as an example, this and migrated that to Claris Connect using the new script step. And you can see how the complexity of that script just is drastically reduced. Not only did you reduce the complexity of the script, but now this integration is it's portable. You can call it from anywhere, from any file. You no longer just have to take the script and copy and paste it through all the files, and even having to maintain it through all the different files. Now you can offset this integration onto Claris Connect, where you've got scalability, speed, and uptime there, and also managing those credentials over there. So I'm going to try to do a live demo here. So hopefully this works out okay, and just show you a little bit of how this new script step works. So I'm here in Claris Connect. I've already created a flow, and this is the script set that comes, the script trigger that comes with the FileMaker connector. And these are the regular steps that you'd have to take if you're using the insert from your URL script step. And so we're trying to do away with all these things. You can see there's a lot of steps, and you can make mistakes in any one of those. But I'm going to copy the URL that we create. We create a unique URL every time you use the trigger here in Claris Connect. I'm going to take it over here to FileMaker, and I've already got the script environment open, and I'm going to start typing here and look for the trigger Claris Connect flow script step. And I hit enter. You'll notice that automatically the URL was entered there for me. So we recognize that you have a URL in the clipboard, and we're going to paste it in there automatically for you, so you don't even have to worry about that. The other thing that we've done here, just to make it easier for you to interact with Claris Connect, is instead of having to configure a variable for the JSON, include those in your curl options, we've got a parameter specifically designed for your JSON data. So you click on it and you've got the entire calculation engine here available for you. You're probably going to want to use, the built-in JSON functions, but you could type in anything you want. So I'll just put something very simple in here. Something that you don't have to put in here anymore is that custom JSON object that was required before, because we're going to take care of all those things there for you. As a matter of fact, we also take care of if you're using webhooks, this will also work with webhooks. If you're using API key there, we have a separate parameter there for you there as well, so you don't have to configure that. And you can also specify where you want the results to be saved, whether or not on a field or a variable, just very similar to the insert from URL script step. But once I have this over here, then I've got this ready. I can go back to connect and I can add something else over here. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new action. Let's say we wanted to pass some data along to Slack and maybe let everybody know that something's going on. So click over here and I can click here and look at the data that comes in from that trigger. So this is data that might have come in from FileMaker, and I can click over here and use that as a variable. So now when I enable this and run this script, then I can pass that data off to Claris Connect. The flow runs, and I'll bring up here Slack, and you can see the data passed from FileMaker into Connect and run here for Slack in this case. So as you can see, very easy to set up and call your Claris Connect flows directly from FileMaker. We're trying to make the integration between our products a lot more cohesive, a lot tighter, so that we can expose a lot of these features from one product to another and make it a lot easier for you. So that's it for me. I'll stop here and hand it back over to you, Doug. Thanks.
Thanks, Ronnie. So easy peasy, a lot easier to use than before. Quick one, so quick announcement. Well, everyone knows about it, but basically Claris Engage will take place next year, 2024, between February the 6th to the 8th. So we'll be in Austin, Texas, in the brand new Apple center that's actually building. So the main part that we're actually going to is all finished, and there's been confusion in the community somewhere that people thought it wasn't built. It's built, it's already been used. It's where the SE training occurs. So it's not its venue. And then once we have information on booking dates, on all the things, it will basically be on community, and we'll send you a huge amount of emails just to make sure that everyone's aware when it's taking place and how to actually book all the information. And that's it for me. If you have any questions, as Ronnie says every time, questions are free.
That's great, thank you. That's a really good presentation from both of you. Fascinating stuff, a lot in there. Do we want to hold questions until we've done the two demos, or do we want to ask a few questions now? I think maybe a few questions now would be good if people have got them, whilst it's fresh in people's minds, and then move on to the two demos. That was really great presentation, you two.
All right, and before questions, because I have to run off, I know at the beginning, Gary was talking about learning to play the piano. I am relearning how to play the violin, and my violin teacher is due in about 10 minutes. Just one last request, please let us know what you thought. Basically what you think of FileMaker 2023 and what you thought of the presentation today. I am dropping a survey link in the chat.
Great. That's fantastic, Rosemary. Enjoy your violin lesson.
Thank you. And I will maybe, if you guys are still here, jump back in for the virtual bar after my lesson.
See you later.
So see y'all later.
See you later.
Wonderful. Cheers, Rosemary. I got a couple of questions, but I can hold them till later. But it's that's the key thing. Mine's mainly around the server stuff that you mentioned, Doug. But I'm quite happy to wait until later and mention those. But if anyone's got other pertinent questions, then fine.
I've got one.
John posted a question.
Quick.
Go ahead, Ian.
Okay. The engineering blog on the load balancing was really good. I was able to get that working. I mean, it took a while, but it was a very good, very descriptive blog. So with the new feature in 2023, does that kind of replace any of the aspects of that? And then the other question is the ability to set the Nginx load balancer, is that available in the command line API? I'm doing most of the server configuration through Ansible, so I don't want to touch the admin console.
Good question. I'll have to check. I'll have to check with the engineer just to see whether you can touch. It should be, yeah, it should be accessible either by the CLI or the API. I'll try to figure out where it's located.
Okay. I mean, if it's available by either one of them, then that's cool. So I'll find it.
It will probably be the admin API.
Okay, great.
That's the one that has the more sort of control.
Yeah. It's yeah, it's a really great improvement. So thanks very much.
My pleasure. Well, the engineer's pleasure, I'd say. Anything.
If no one's got a question, I'm going to ask a couple of questions, Doug, that you mentioned. So obviously, my biggest concern I have, yes, I'm running on a Windows server still, so that's my biggest failure. I'm aware of that, but it's when I get time to transfer away from it. But at the moment, we patch every month all of our servers because we have to. It's Windows. If you didn't, you're mad if you don't. So as a consequence for us, that's 4 servers I got shut down that are running all the time, and I've got to have that time period to do it. So a couple of things. The crash log that you said, and the caching. Yeah, great. I think actually the first thing I want to say is the stuff that you've mentioned is music to my ears. It's the fact that hopefully there's a point that I can then shut down the server and fine. I know even with 19 and previous versions, I think from 16 onwards, you could just go to Windows and just go restart server and it will shut the servers down gracefully. It doesn't always work, never has worked for me, and I wouldn't trust it because then you're putting the command of Windows into accessing your FileMaker server and shutting them down properly. So I do it the other way. I go into each admin console, I shut them down, I make sure they're down properly, I check the logs, and then I'll reboot the server and do the stuff. That's just me, I'm paranoid. But are you saying going forward then, there's the point that the quick restart and that side of stuff is the fact that you could do unattended updates in effect, and you could set Windows Update to automatically update at 3 in the morning. It would go run the update, reboot the server, shut down the server properly, and then come back up.
So we wouldn't actually give the power to Windows or Mac or the OS. It will still be within the power of the FileMaker processes running. So the idea is within the admin console, because the thing you'll still have to download, and we'll still have to verify whether your license key is still there. But from the admin console, instead of currently having to actually shut down basically the server and the admin sort of the backend, you'd be able to actually say update by FileMaker server, and FileMaker, the processes behind it, will do all the work. So you will actually download the installer, close the file properly, close the admin server, close the server, run the update, and then restart. So okay. Stuff that you do manually now will be run basically by the FileMaker sort of service.
Okay, so from the FileMaker upgrade, it will be a unattended access in effect with the FileMaker server as a application. That's fine.
Yeah.
But when anything else needs to reboot that machine that it's running on, it's still the same process of I'm going to shut down the server as I normally would do.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Fair enough.
We're trying to keep the two sort of separate. So it's like we do what we can within the Windows our world, and then maybe there'll be some tools that we give you so that if you want to do more stuff. But the idea is we give you the tools to manage your FileMaker server instance, and then everything else is up to you to decide how you want to sort of play with it.
The other question I had, you said the 5% hit in performance to write out that cache file, the persistent cache to disk. Is that performance, that 5% performance of disk performance, or CPU, or what? What's the performance?
So a disk performance.
Yeah, fine. Okay, all right, cool. Which is what I thought it would be, because you're right.
CPU, what it doesn't do much. It's just basically it has to do. So if actually do it once, it's actually doing 3 times now the same stuff.
Yeah, it's just doing the write as well. That's fine.
Yeah. So on your very expensive PC or servers, it's going to basically for the hard to do persistent cache to disk will be really quick. And so on some systems, you're not going to notice that much difference. But if you're running maybe
I don't think I'd even notice it, to be fair. So I think it'll be so small.
But if you're using still an old sort of hard disk, and if you're doing a writing disk, you'll see a bit of a.
And the last one, the Active Directory, is that Azure AD as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. Okay, cool. I was just checking. So it could be on-prem AD and Azure, or
it's on-prem. Yeah, it's both version. Yeah, so that now you have access to AD and ADFS. So if you're using the Azure directory file system, what it's called, both actually work with Ubuntu.
Okay, that's all my questions answered. Thank you. Cheers, Doug. Anyone got any others? Or
so I've got Orlando's question on the web testing for 1,000 users. So we kind of use it on it's one of the template files that we have. So it's actually 3 template files that we actually have. We chuck it with the usual amount of data, and then we have processors to sort of pretend actually they are being clients sort of putting in information. So if you have a very, very sort of, the problem is actually how do you sort of test on with real world sort of application. And this is what we've actually sort of done in the West, so that we were trying not just to get normally like 1,000, but we're trying to actually make sure that if you have a heavy or very busy sort of application, it could go to 100 without any problems. So the idea is to be able to actually add extra web publishing engine on top of it. There isn't really a limit of the amount of web publishing engine that you can have in the system. So you could actually have more. The problem is basically afterwards is you have 10, 12, 15. I mean, it gets to actually have a lot of machines to actually be able to actually. So if you have Dockers, it makes everyone's life a lot easier. But we are doing some testing, and we are working with a couple of SBA providers to actually see whether we can actually do some tests with their systems to see how it's coping to actually handle the load.
Great, thanks for that. Yeah, I was just always curious on the type of solution you were testing for those.
Yeah, so we have like 2 solutions that were given to us by an SBA member, one in the US, well, actually 2 in the US that had some issues before, and so we use those sort of versions as well to do some testing. Yeah, to be able to actually sort of see whether this is actually sort of works properly. So.
Perfect. Cool. Thank you.
And there's also another question in the chat to Ronnie about from John about adding your own connectors. And Ronnie's replied that there's a semi-public beta coming up if anyone's interested in that. So details from the chat there. Okay, I think we should probably move on to some exciting demoing. Always having a demo. I have got what have I got down here? Doug, are you leaving the trigger on Connect Flow on Windows all to John?
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. In that case, I've got Mark, you up next for the form script on server with callback. Nice little demo, which I know you're hugely excited about.
Yeah, yes, I am. Hello, everyone. I'll crack on. I'll show my. Can I share my screen? Is that doable?
Yeah, you should be able.
Splendid. Right, can you see that?
Yep.
Excellent. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Mark from WeKnowData. I'm the head of live development data at WeKnowData. So I kind of look after the development teams that work on our clients' live systems, whether that's ones that we built ourselves and are now in support and maintenance, or whether it's a legacy system that we've picked up from other developers and we're now kind of supporting that going forwards. So obviously I was excited by the release of FileMaker 2023 or FileMaker 20. I don't know who's buying it in box form, by the way. I like it, but I don't know why they've got a box.
You'd be surprised.
So obviously there's loads of great features, and Doug, you've gone through loads of it, and there's like PDF thumbnail generation on Windows now, dark mode support for relationship graph. All of this is great, send mail via OAuth, but I speak to clients most of the time. I have a very direct relationship with all of our clients, and none of this is going to get them excited. It's going to get us excited. It's fantastic, and it gives us loads more tools in our toolbox to make some sophisticated systems. But the thing that excited me was the one that I knew was going to get the end users excited, and that was, of course, perform script on the server with Callback. I mean, I've always been a big fan of perform script on server. Anyway, since 2013 when it came out, because it makes a massive difference to users' process flows. They can send stuff to the server and they can carry on with their business without having to run any processor intensive tasks locally, which means that, we've all done it. Basically, you set something running and go off and make a cup of tea and hope it's finished, and you come back and it's not finished, and you go and make another cup of tea, and then you need a wee, and then hopefully it eventually finishes. So PSOS was fantastic in terms of sending that there, but that in itself has limitations because you sort of have to rely on the script running without any problems. So, if we always assume that our scripts are very robust and very well written, but it's only when you send it to the server and hope that it comes back without any problems that you realize that there's a record locking issues or something else has gone on. So when I learned about perform script on server with Callback, I immediately thought that's fantastic, because I can now get a message back to the user to say that their process is finished, and they can then do the next part of whatever it is that they're working on. So I thought I would give a practical demonstration of that so that we can see it actually in action, if that's all right. So, I mean, let's start with looking at the actual documentation. So if you haven't already kind of picked it up by now, perform script on server with Callback basically is PSOS on steroids, as you've got the PSOS bit, which is as it was before, which obviously performs a script on the server without freezing the client. The magic bit happens now where you perform the specified callback script when the server script is done. Crucially, that script runs locally to the user that's actually triggered it, which is fantastic. Now, just a quick note on compatibility. Obviously, it's compatible with Pro, Go, and WebDirect. Obviously not FileMaker server because it's running on the server. And if we look at the example that we get in the Claris documentation, we've got it's two parts. You've got the script, the first script that runs there, then a bunch of parameters that you send with it, which this particular example uses, and then you've got your callback script. So here we've got the task of emailing a snapshot link to a named user. So go to the layout, find the actual record, set a temporary path, save a snapshot to that temporary path, and then send an email with it attached. And then at the end, crucially, you're sending a text result of snapshot links and then it shows that there. That is a relatively light touch use of it. One that, to be honest, you could probably do locally anyway, but it gives you a good example of it. What I wanted to do is look at another example using one of our files. So this is the file here. This is a file that has been built for one of WindowData's clients by one of our esteemed associates, a guy called Philip Kemp, who's a very good developer. And essentially what this does is it allows you to create application forms or different process flows. I'll just give you a quick whistle-stop tour of it. You can set up templates to say, right, if I've got a sales lead, then they need to fill out these fields here, and you add your fields there, and they also need to complete these tasks. And it basically means that you can keep track of things. So what I'm going to do is I was going to kind of find a potential use case of this by saying let's say that this is going to be used for a sales pipeline, and there's been an exhibition and we've got loads of people signing up just with the first name, last name and email address, and we want them to come straight into the database, and we want them to be designated as new leads, and with new leads they also need to have all the related fields to fill in, and they all need to have the related tasks assigned. Now if we just have a very quick look, this is the data, the raw data. We've got I've just gone for 1,000 records at this point, just to throw something meaningful at it. Okay, and I will have a look at the script and how we kind of intend to work through this. Okay, so firstly, first look at it is if you do PSOS, you now look at that. You've got two different options now. So you've got perform script on server, you recognize it, but now you've got with callback. You click on that, then you've got the two options. One option, the first option is to do the actual script part of it. And then the second option obviously is to do the callback script, both of which come with parameters so that you can customize it. So in order to do this, I've done a 3-step process. The first step process is to collate my data, because I wanted to allow myself to put just an Excel spreadsheet of those signups in there and to basically import those into the database. I've had to do it locally at the moment because the export field contents script step is not compatible on FileMaker server. I have subsequently learned that there is a way of doing that because Vincenzo Manano has very helpfully pointed out I've got a blog that shows you how to do this. So if you need that, I'll put that in afterwards. But this is a really good blog, and I just didn't have time to include it in this particular version of the demo. But essentially, what we're going to do is going to export the field contents to a temporary path, re-import it into the system, and then we're going to trigger all of the creation of all of the fields and the subtasks with every single one of those 1,000 records, and we're going to do that all on the server before telling the user that it's done and they can carry on with the rest of their day. So as you can see, this is the sort of the first subscript that is run, which is the PSOS bit, the bit that's going to run on the server. So grabbing all the data, and then you're going to loop through it, create your new records with the information. You're going to loop through all of this, create your fields, create your subtasks, and then go back to the loop, and you're going to do that for all 1,000 records. Once that's finished, as you can see there, we've got the callback part of that. Move your faces. The callback part of that there, which does this very simple script basically, and that is grabbing the application count, the number of applications, refreshing the window so that it's updated, and then a dialog to say it's been done, and asking the user whether they want to go to the new records or hold the script. So let's see it in action. Okay, so here we go. I've filled out the details previously, so we've got it all here. So the application date today, let me give it a test of FMBug May 23. Okay, we're going to use the sales lead task template. We're going to say that once they're done, they're going to be allocated as the new lead, and it's going to go to the sales team. And then that is the file that I looked at previously. And we'll click on save. Now this is the bit that takes a while because I've got to import it all in there. So there's two parts of this. Firstly, importing all that, well, exporting to a temporary path, re-importing into the file. And then there's a process of replacing a field with a UUID so that we can do that. While this is running, I'll tell you about another blog that Fabrice Nordman wrote a good one on perform script on server with callback. Similarly, in a lot more detail, Vincenzo wrote about it in a much more kind of technical detail that I'm doing. I'm showing you a practical demo, but if you wanted to kind of read an extension of that with graphs and stuff, then I would recommend reading that, and I'll put the link in the I'll put the link in the chat afterwards. Right, so we're updating with the UUIDs, and once that's done, that's now the rest of that is happening on the server. It's all doing its thing on the server. You'll see that the records are starting to filter through now. As you can see, they're adding all the records, so we know that, but the end user can now crack on with some other things. So maybe they're going to book some follow-up calls with some other users. Let's have a look in here. Okay, well, that one's done. And this is still doing everything it needs to do. But what we're basically expecting at the end of this is to get a lovely little message saying, hooray, it's done. this is the bit where the video where I kind of like edit out this bit so that it would just ping up. But I wanted to throw a relatively large number of records at it just so we could see it in real time. The other thing you can do is, by the way, switch teams, which is quite useful. You can go, right, I got a completely different dashboard there. And the callback script will still, depending on regardless of what team you're signed in at, it will come up. There it is. A new batch of 1,000 application records just been created. What a time to be alive. Do you want to view the newly created records now or wait until later? So if we do now, then it will take us back to the dashboard, and there they are, all ready to work out. So that is a practical use of perform script on server, which then got me. I mean, obviously, this is a very simplistic application of it. You know, it's just a set a task running, ping back with a message to say it's run, well done, and that's it. But there are loads of other things that I was thinking that you could do with it now, because you can leverage all the other things that are not compatible with the server to really kind of make these process flows a lot more kind of seamless. I mean, there's just looking at some of the incompatible script steps. You could, for example, send a mail via the email client. I know that obviously you could send it via SMTP or OAuth, which are compatible on the server. But let's just say that you wanted to compose an email for the end user to pop up in their client, and they might want to, you know, add their little finishing touches on it to make it a bit more personal. Then you can get that to happen once you've run a script on the server. You can dial a phone with it if you want to interact with VoIP. There's all kinds of things, but printing as well. You know, if you think about the amount of like reports that get sent and they take ages and ages to process, what you could do is like send that to run, and then as soon as it's ready to print, you can open up a print dialog on the end user's computer, and they can print it straight away. I'm sure that'd be useful. Perform Apple script, again, that blog that I referred to that Vincenzo wrote refers to how you can leverage Apple scripts so that you can pop up an iOS message rather than having FileMaker. So if you're just doing data entry, you might want to not be disturbed by FileMaker, but an iOS message can pop up and sort of tell you that that's finished as well. You can even open a URL. So if you send a load of information to a third-party reporting application, then it can actually open it when it's ready to view on your browser. So there's lots of different uses for it, and we're just scratching the surface, I think, and I can't wait to talk to some of our clients and work out how they want us to use it. And that concludes my presentation. Thanks for your time.
Thank you,
Well,
Mark.
Yeah, good.
Very interesting. Just one quick thing occurred to me is presumably you can, as part of your script that you're calling when you come back, call a new script on server with.
Yeah, you could keep going backwards and forwards.
You keep going back and forth, create a little flow that way.
Take the day off, basically.
Yeah.
I did all this work and I was there. Definitely.
There was one thing that one of our associates mentioned, which I thought would be wicked, and he said, "Wouldn't it be good if you could specify a callback going to a different named user?" So if you're sort of going, right now, these invoices are created, Carol in accounts, can you send them? And that sort of set me thinking, because you can message users directly from FileMaker admin console. So surely, and Doug is going to basically tell me this is nonsense, but surely there must be a way. You're not that far off being able to message other users.
A while ago. Well, there's Claris Connect.
There you go.
Yeah, Claris Connect would be one way. I wrote a in FileMaker chat system for a company. So it used FileMaker's records to create a chat system. So literally you could then fire into that FileMaker chat file the result of that, and it will go to the relevant person with the link to go back to the file and find the records quite easily.
Right. Would it come up as a custom dialog?
I think, well, the chat system, you can put anything in the record in the chat system. So you'd just be putting a record and the URL link to the record set. So you could send it to someone else, in my view. I think that's possible.
Nice.
But yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great. It'd be a great way of doing that. Question I wanted to ask is, what's the scheduling of that dialog box? So I press a button to go run that task on the server, and then I press another button to run a task locally. That takes 5 hours. When does the dialog box show up? Because my machine's now busy.
At the end of the 5 hours, Gary.
That's what I thought. Yeah, it did. Please tell me it doesn't interrupt my current running script. That would be disastrous. So I just wanted to check that. It's the only thing I thought of. If the user then goes off and runs something locally, that's major. The dialog's got to then come up.
Thanks for answering that, John, because my tests did not run that deep.
I was
Cheers, John.
just about to ask the same question. I would expect to have an option like the FileMaker perform script with option in JavaScript to define how it's going to run in the stack. But yeah, it would be nice if we had that.
It makes sense to do it at the end, so that's fine.
I think it says in the help, if you run it several times, it'll just queue up until it's free.
Right.
What if you're logged in on 2 different devices with the same account? So is it specific to the device and user session that's triggered it, right? The callback goes back to that login.
It's using the session ID.
Okay, good, yeah.
The session identifier, basically.
So what happens if the session, they log off and then log back on a minute later? Do they get the notifications it failed?
No.
Let's try it. Let's try and break it now. Live.
No, actually,
that's a great
Mark,
idea.
you know what? So if it's using the session ID, you could run the script and then change the session ID from the machine number 1. And while the script is running, set the same session that the machine number 1 was using to the machine number 2. Would that would that pop the message to the machine number 2, Doug? Using the set session identifier.
You've given us a new shiny toy, Doug, and we want to break it.
Break it, poke it with sticks.
Status, I don't want to ask why you would do that, but there you go. But there you go.
Because Mark asked for it.
It's using the session ID inside the system that you're not seeing. It's not using the session identifier. Session identifier is specific. You can have multiple, like if you have multiple web direct connection, it knows that it's coming from the same person. It's using the session ID that's in the transaction.
So to answer my question, Doug, what happens if you log off? So I have a script that's going to take 2 hours to run. I then start that at 1 in the afternoon. I go off, I quit FileMaker because I'm only in it for a bit of time to do the update, and I go back into it at 3 o'clock after my lunch or whatever. What's my session ID? That script's still running. Will it actually notify me it's finished, or am I a different user now?
I'm just going to try it, and I'll tell you the answer in 2 minutes for the system to try that.
I thought Mark was going to do it. That's fine.
We can all log in and basically throw loads at it.
It's got to act like some kind of promise, hasn't it? Where you've said, here's the thing. Now, I'm now waiting for a notification that you're going to send me, and the server's going to broadcast every time it finishes one of those. And somebody's going, oh, I'm sitting here waiting for that message. So if you have somehow destroyed that waiting part of the promise, either by logging off or by your computer crashing, I can't see how it could pick it up.
I think it sounds to me like this needs to be used as a notification rather than passing data back. So the script on server sets the data somewhere and it just tells you that it's there. If you do come in another session, you need to kind of look for it. That's my interpretation.
That's similar to what I was just thinking, in that this would be really, really useful, that if you're doing that import and all that processing on the server inside a transaction and something goes wrong and the transactions fails, you can let the user know, hey, it didn't work.
Yeah.
You need to go and do it again.
I don't know about that, because the callback script cannot has an input of the exit script of the on server. So you would need to do something like write the result somewhere in the database and then grab it from the client.
It does
Yeah.
stuff this.
Oh, it doesn't.
It does. If you
It
use
does?
get script result, not get script parameter, you get the data passed from the server script.
So in the callback script, you can use the get script result and it will grab the result from the script.
Correct.
Providing
Nice.
providing you put an exit script result in the original script, I take it.
In the server script,
Yeah, exactly.
if you exit the server script with some result and then use get script result in the callback script, you will get the data passed. It won't work if you use get script parameter.
Of course. Nice.
This
Cool.
is
That
yeah.
works.
This is really good stuff.
Yeah.
Doug's looking concerned.
No, I'm just testing to see what happens if you come out of it.
Yeah, I'm running the same script and I've just quit out of FileMaker. I'm going to come back in and see what happens. So if my screen goes blank, something bad happened.
Derek
Okay, so
just edit that out of the recording.
Absolutely. There's various. I do like a Benny Hill session of speeding your video up while we're waiting. So that's fine. I'll do that. Don't worry.
So the callback doesn't happen if you run your script, if you start.
Which makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
I don't expect it not to, because how would it know where to call back? It needs an active session. So that's fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if it.
Does it report it in the error log?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Oh, I wasn't expecting so much work today.
It's your fault for not expecting it, though.
I hate to say this, you've come to the wrong group if you didn't want to do any work.
No, it doesn't. There's no error.
Well, that's one for the team. You do a callback and you get no response, write an error log. That makes sense as well. So that would be useful.
Might be quite useful to have a message if you try and close FileMaker that you have an outstanding task.
Well,
how would you know how it? Yeah,
well,
go on, John.
when it initiates the task, you could somehow record that maybe.
If it's just a broadcast message, how do you know it's failed or not? You've then got to have a second bit of two-way communication from the client back to the server to say, oh, I didn't get that. If the server just says, hey, I finished, broadcast, that's it done. It doesn't care about whether or not you're listening.
But exactly, yeah, and you don't want to have something that interferes with the user trying to shut down a computer. That just, I hate those programs that do that.
Yeah,
I know. That is
in this case, in this kind of scenario, if I shut down my computer, I want my computer to shut down. I don't want to have to answer a question about some process that I thought was running.
Whereas the maturer group of this unit forgot it was running, because that's what I do. I forgot I even started it.
I can see you're just going to do this for fun, Gary, to give yourself little messages at odd times.
Wake up, move the mouse, continue working. There you go. I think the scope on this is huge. And we do a lot of this backwards and forwards with our bot system that we've got. So we have the same sort of thing, but when the task finishes, we know who initiated it. So we've got a resync on our website. So the end user could then tag up, we've got 130,000 things on the website. Someone can go, I want to change the prices of everything from this to this. And they'll go, I've got 20,000 things. That I'll tell you, before the pandemic, that used to be run on the local machine. So after the pandemic, when the pandemic hit, we moved it all to a central bots and so forth to do this, but it's the same process. We write all the records out, same as you did, Mark, into a table. So we know who initiated that response. The bot goes through them all because it knows the username of that. We've got a table that's got all the user credentials to notify them. So we can do it that if we wanted to broadcast, we don't broadcast a message anyhow, we just send an email to them. But if we were to broadcast and we couldn't get an answer from them because they weren't there, we could then default to an email as a secondary because we knew we didn't get the broadcast out because they weren't online. So we could check the server and say, is that user still online? If they are, send the message. If they're not online, send an email instead. It just goes into their email saying this task is finished. So it's a similar process, but the callback is a lot slicker, and it's also, there's no delay in it. You're not waiting for an email to be sent through someone's email client and someone to pick it up. It's there instantly. So there's a lot of scope on this.
I think so. Can we talk about any more scope in a bit? Because if
we
get John started now, we'll be bang on time. We might actually complete a meeting with all the actions happening on time, which would be unheard of.
It would be unheard of. Doug, you want to report back? So Doug, you just said it didn't work. Just to summarise, it didn't work. That's fine. We expected it not to, but it doesn't write an error log, so you've made a note of that.
No, I've got no error log in here. Mine.
Right, okay, fine.
So the one thing that I know is if you're back on the performance on some of the callback, if your client gets disconnected, so not closed. So basically, if you're moving away from your machine and then goes into, like, it puts your session into the background, it will keep the callback information on server for about 10 minutes until basically your client gets reconnected. But if the file is closed, then the callback information is not sent across.
Fair enough. That's where I'd expect it to work. That's fine. It's just the point is knowing the limitations of it. That's it. So what you don't want to do is have it that I don't know, nuclear launch button when you get the callback from FileMaker server that it's unlocked the little flap to press it. You kind of really would like to know it's happened. It depends on the severity or the importance of what you're trying to do the callback, but that's fine.
But on that context, how cool would it be if we had perform script on client using a session identifier, which is already modifiable in FileMaker, meaning you wouldn't need to use admin API. You would just use the session identifier. You would need to store it somewhere in the database, but then instead of running script on server, you could run script on client.
Running script on other employees or users without their knowledge.
Yeah, that's where I was thinking there's a security issue in this.
No,
Let's not go there.
Well, I mean,
this is what we are doing, Doug. This is our job.
But you can already do that.
Yeah.
I think Eurus and your own have shown demos at dotFMP on doing that.
Peter Weckerman did something like that, didn't he?
Yeah. With the MBS, the port thing, the socket thing.
Oh yeah, no! What you can do is you can trigger up by deleting a record.
Yeah.
And deleting a record triggers the on-record load. Although on-record load still fires even if there's no record, which I reported as a bug, but FileMaker assured me that was not a bug.
It's a feature.
Yes.
More the point of, you can do something, but it's whether you should. I think I just want to leave you with
that. Yes.
Point taken.
Good point. I think John's back.
I am. Yeah. Thank you. A couple of quick things. That the thing that Vince has written about doing notifications with AppleScript, I think we're both convinced it doesn't totally work on an M2 Mac. Not quite sure why. Because I've set up the Macs the same as various other kind of Macs, and it just doesn't work from FileMaker 2023.
I've put the link in the chat, by the way. For that.
Yeah, it's a great idea, but we can't. I can't get it to work, and then he admitted he can't get it to work either.
So John, you're saying on an M2 specifically, or an ARM M processor?
It appears to be something to do with that, and I'm not running Ventura, I'm running Monterey, but I can get the notification to work from the script editor, but not to fire from FileMaker 2023 with the same code. That may, so your mileage may vary. Be interested if other people can try it and see if it works.
Okay.
Secondly, if you haven't seen it, further up the chat, big up to James for writing a blog post about how to get the OAuth working with Google. If you haven't already read it, it's absolutely worth doing. Thank you, James. That was fabulous. So I'm going to do some, not a presentation tonight, but some live coding, because that seems to be fun, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah.
So we're going to, the idea is, so this kind of presentation is for people like Jul who go, oh, I haven't played with it at all yet. So we're going to play with it. And also I'm going to tell you some things that don't work, because that just saves you a bit of time, really. So allegedly, this new OnWindowTransaction step is about running a script when you commit a record, or to be more precise, it's about running a script when you commit a transaction, because a transaction, as we've now begun to understand, can be more than just one thing. FileMaker's always been transactional. So if you edited a record and some portal records, they'd all save together, but now we have some explicit steps around that. There are, however, several ways to alter your data which won't make use of this mechanism under any circumstances. And some of them are in fact FileMaker script steps, not all external. So for example, truncate table will not trigger this because of where truncate table works at the database engine level, not at the window level. And all the other things like data API, OData, ODBC, if you're just modifying data with those methods, this won't work. It will if you run a script, because obviously a script has to have something that is a context for it to work in, which is a window, therefore it can work. But if you just modify data externally from the outside, this won't run. Therefore, it's not the panacea to every single time I modify data, I can have it logged. So you just need to kind of put that away for a second. So the help says, this performs a script, creates a JSON object after a transaction is successfully committed. And if you've screenshotted or just go back and look again, Doug's got that slide that Doug put up is great. Just says, hey, so the JSON object includes the file name, the base table name, the record ID, the operation, and maybe some content, which is kind of optional. So that's what we're going to play around with looking at. So I have a local file here with a table of kind of clients. At the bottom is some data. And so I need to go and turn it on. So I go to File Options, and in the script triggers, right at the bottom, we have this new script trigger to choose from. Once it's on, it's now on in the whole file. There's no kind of optional part of it. It's either on or off for the whole file. And it says I can run a script. So I've got a script called onWindowTransaction. And on the transaction, I'm just going to turn that off for a second. I'm going to open a card window into a table, make a record, put some data in there, and close the window. Okay, so if I turn this on, File Options, Script Triggers, OnWindowTransaction, and choose that script, what that script will do is if I now modify and then save this record, it will go here and make a record and put some data in there, okay? So I'm going to change one letter in my postcode. And before I do, And anybody in the group, tell me why that is a really bad idea.
No, John, enlighten us. Go on.
Shall we try it and just see what happens? So as soon as I commit, let me just turn this on for a second. As soon as I commit,
you will get in an infinite loop.
Thank you, Stathis. I'm going to run the script called onWindowTransaction, which is going to go somewhere else in the file, create a record, and let's just see what happens. I am indeed stuck in a loop. And if I have to crash out, and so basically, if you do it in a table in the same file, you can get yourself stuck in a loop because you're creating a new record in the log table. And every time you create a new record and commit it, it's creating another record in the log table, which is creating another record in the log table. Really bad idea, okay? For number one. Second thing is, as a for example, this will show as an example potentially. The basic amount of data that I'm currently logging, I changed one character in my database, and I've got a JSON object which is at least 87 characters long. So if I told you, here's a really good way to blow up your file by 90 times, there are people like Gary who will not thank you kindly for that as well. So first suggestion is pretty much wherever you're storing this data that you're if you're doing this and it's a log thing, external file, don't do it inside the same file because nobody will thank you for that. So let's just get out of that local file, and here's a hosted version of the same thing for the moment. So just go into here and go file options. The onWindowTransaction script is on. Let's just look at the script again in there. This time, what I'm doing is I'm just running a script in that other file. So I'm passing whatever I've got from FileMaker as its parameter, I'm just sending it over into the log file. So if I change that for a B, I'm in fact just putting a couple of, so I do know why that's happened. And this was to demo something. So the log record it's created here is from this file and this table. If I go into the relationship graph here and just change this table occurrence to clients. Okay, you can now see, like, it's tiny, but top left, this table occurrence is now called clients. If I change this back again to that postcode, I'm just showing a dialog. The two log records both show that it's the customer's table, because it's not the customer's table, as in we understand table occurrence, it's the base table. Okay. It's actually what the help says. So there's this new concept in that we've now got some functions to be able to kind of talk to it, that behind the scenes, we tend to care a lot about what our table occurrences are named. FileMaker is now working at this a little level below that, and it's going, well, you might have 15 different TOs all pointing to the same table, 15 different layouts, but if you change the data, you're still changing it in the same base table. So the name here is the base table name. That does not help you at all with knowing which layout somebody changed this data on. You just know that in that file, in that base table, a record was in fact modified. Okay. So if you want to know that information in the same way that we'll kind of look at a few other things, you have to kind of work out how to give that information across to your log, because it doesn't come. There's a lot. All this stuff comes free from FileMaker, but other stuff doesn't. You have to go away and basically build it yourself. So that's sending something. If you leave this field name blank, it will still work because FileMaker is creating this JSON object in the background. Their suggestion is a field called onWindowTransaction, which can be anything, frankly. So here's a bit of JSON in the onWindowTransaction field. Absolutely doesn't matter what it is. But if I now say, okay, go to the script triggers, go to here, and what I'd like is on window transaction to be what's sent across, so that if I modify this, I'll create a new log record, and what I'm getting is this. It's the contents of the onWindowTransaction field. That's got nothing to do with the data that I just changed. It's something that I've decided I want to be in this record that happens automatically. So let's go back to the beginning. This is a mechanism that runs a script that does something and passes it the contents of a field as soon as you commit the record or commit the transaction. And now clearly it makes a lot of sense if what you're passing is in fact a pile of data about the record that you just modified, but it doesn't have to be at all. So I've got a field here, which is a JSON object made up of the data that's in the table. So if I change this to _data instead, and then modify this field. I'm just doing that obviously to just trigger the save. As soon as I click on and it's created the log record, it's now passed across the data that was in that field. Okay. So you're in control of what gets sent across as a parameter. I've got a custom function behind this field, which is I rewrote. Jonathan Mickelson there's a custom function on Brian Dunning for turning the contents of your table into a JSON object. I rewrote it last night as a while function, which includes the ability to exclude some fields and excluding global fields and calculated fields, so they're just normal text fields, to just create a JSON object for the purpose of this. Okay. So reminder that the structure that FileMaker gives you is that you get the file name, the base table name, and then what the action is, whether it's a new record, a modified record, or a deleted record. So to my knowledge, this is the first time ever that we can capture deleted records natively without having to go through a whole bunch of stuff, which means that when somebody clicks delete, you have to script the whole process. We just get this now for free. And then the contents of some kind of field. But it's using the base table name, not the TO name. The onWindowTransaction script step, which is there, you can't choose the option for it. It has a continue behavior. So if there's another script running when you do that, it will then just queue up behind it. So if you kind of have a long script running, but then you kind of do a load of things which create transactions, they'll just queue up to do whatever your logging type action is, rather than interrupting them. Now, obviously, so I'm just kind of going, hey, I've made a JSON object out of the data on this particular record. I might not want to log all of the data of the record. So it might be useful when I create a new record to say, here's the initial values. But if I modify it, I might not want all of that data. So obviously, combining those two things with get modified fields would be useful to go, okay, just like give me the field values of the things that have actually been modified in my JSON object. Doug is right in saying that rather, so if I just go to the script debugger, and on this record, if I go into find mode, in this version of FileMaker, which you will have to shoot me for showing you this, it doesn't work, and I don't think it should. Basically, I think it's a bit of a, in the version that is shipping, if you go into find mode, it will trigger the script trigger. I don't think it should, and currently playing with, should we say, a version that doesn't trigger that in find mode. Therefore, Gary, I might wait till V2 comes out to roll it out to all your people. If you're going to. So
you're saying if you find a commit a record in find mode, it triggers the log.
Correct, and you end up with a blank record.
Yeah, fair enough. There's no record relating to it.
Yeah, don't think it was designed that way. We are playing with one. Obviously, cut that out of the video as well.
Will do. Can I ask a question, a quick one?
Yeah.
What happens if you had a table with 10,000 records and you do a replace?
Well, should we do one of those in a moment?
Yeah, go on then.
Well, not with 10,000 because
no,
that's just,
but my point was, if someone does a replace, does it log everything? So yeah.
That's essentially just silly, isn't it? So this table's got 46 records in. Okay, so I'll do a replace of the company name with the company name. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which will trigger it. Okay. So at this moment in time, there are 71 records in the log. Click replace. That's done. There are 72 records in the log. Why? Because I would expect that the 72nd record would say, here's all the records that you just modified. Okay. Record ID 1, record ID 2, record ID 3. And the reason is that's treated as a transaction. It's a single transaction. It's not 46 separate transactions. It's one transaction. But I have a log that I did, in fact, just change all of those. And so I would expect this to go all the way down to 46. Okay. So that's what happens when you do a replace. You get a single.
Obviously, if you're doing it scripted and you're going through all the records, it's going to do one for every single record.
Well, that depends what you're currently I'm logging some extra data about it. Essentially, I could just have, this could just be, you know, modified 1 and then a blank, but it would have 46 entries, because the issue is, you're saying, when you commit this, log this, when you commit this, run this, and what you're running is, what did you just do? Combination of new, modified, and deleted. So that is exactly what you just did. You replaced something in 46 records. So there are, it says, here's a JSON block of the 46 records that you just modified. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It does
So
make
clearly,
sense.
if you deal with 100,000, you'll have a very, very long entry, but it's one entry.
You'll have a massive entry on one record, yeah.
Yes. A suggestion for not using this when you change container fields, because this will give you the base 64 of the container field, is to have a field which is an MD5 hash of the container field and just log that. So exclude the container field, because clearly if you change the picture in a container, the MD5 hash will change, and you therefore know what data, that some data has changed from point A to point B. That's just a suggestion. So it also copes with, I've just done a, let's just go to projects. So I have a project and it has a number of tasks, okay? So I'm going to change a couple of things. I'm going to change that to quote, but I'm immediately going to go to here. So not commit the record. I'm going to, some idiots spell that incorrectly. So I've made a change there, I've made a change there, and I'm going to delete this portal row, and then I'm going to commit. So what I've got is, I modified a project record, I deleted a task record, and I modified a record. Now it's not showing me any data, and the reason is because in the file I specified, oh, use the field underscore data if it's there. It's not there in those tables. But the way that that field is written is I should be able to, in fact, because it's agnostic, I should be able to just go and paste it into both of those tables. Click OK, and let's just do the same again.
Estimate.
Yeah, let's just do a couple of things. So because I have now pasted that field in there, so you only have a chance to specify that field once, so it has to be the same field in each of the tables that you're using. If I just commit that record, it appears not to be working. I shall need to look at, and that might be because I'm not triggering it at the moment, which is my fault. But in theory, that should kind of pick that up. So if I now delete this whole record, well, let's delete another one that's got fewer on. There you go. If I delete this whole record, it will also, because cascading delete is currently on for these three as well. So if I delete this record, what I'm getting is in the projects table, I've deleted record, but also in the tasks table, I've deleted 3 records. Okay, that's kind of proving that it does technically work. So you can modify and delete and add all in one transaction, and you will get some visibility of what you did. So I now have a question for you as a second testing question. This is showing me, so let me just change this to, I know it's working on here. So I changed that to B19EB. If I look at that record, what's it stored is the value after I have changed it. Okay, so I have a question, which is, when does the script trigger run in the stack? Where is it, and what data is it picking up?
Got to be after the commit.
Well, so here's an interesting thing, Gary. If you run this script after a commit and you've deleted a record, what is there to pick up? Nothing, because you just deleted the record. So it can't be actually after the commit, can it?
No, you committed, the server then does it.
So here's a very interesting thing then.
I don't know, Doug put his camera on, so I think he was waiting to answer.
Great. So you've done the change and then you delete it, so you have two entries. Or are you saying you've done the change, you haven't committed, and then you've done the delete?
So if you delete a record and this script is run after the commit implies that you've then sent that to the server and then this script runs, but therefore that record doesn't exist anymore. So there's a weird liminal space here, and I'm going to demonstrate that by adding to this layout a script trigger which runs on record commit. Okay. So if I just change that and turn on my script debugger and just click off, the first thing that happens is the on record commit fires from the layout. And in this case, what I'm doing is just showing a custom dialog. Let's skip out of that. That's now finished. And then the onWindowTransaction runs after that. So the layout on record commit runs before the commit actually happens. That's a test question for those who are wanting to take the test, by the way. It's a pre-trigger, because you can cancel the commit from happening by exiting the script with false. Okay, so the commit has not yet happened when the on layout trigger runs. You can stop it with a false in the script, but this file on OnWindowTransaction happens after that. Okay, so here's a very interesting thing. If I change, let's just kind of do something completely stupid here. If I now commit this record, in the log, I will expect to see that saved in the log as the data that I have just changed. Is it possible to get the current value of that field as well as the changed value of that field at the same time?
In theory, yeah, you can perform script on server to get the record contents because the server hasn't committed anything yet.
Correct. Or, what do you think my favorite subject is, everybody?
Oh, it might be OData, I think.
I think you'll find it might be.
I know where this is going.
No. So I did see, there's the script steps to do exactly what you just said, Gary.
Yeah.
Go off and do a perform script on the server. So this, when the window transaction happens, the data is not yet written to the server. Therefore, you can run a perform script on server to say, could you just give me the value of this record right now?
Yeah.
That's it as perform script on server. That's exactly the same thing as an OData query to the same record saying, could you just give me the value of the field right now? And it's significantly faster because it's just doing a query. It doesn't have to, when you run perform script on server, it has to set up a session and all of that overhead with that. This way, whole lot quicker. So let's just see what happens. That's what the dialogue that's coming up is running. When the record is committed, it's going to the server and saying, give me the value. Okay, so I've just added loads of Y's after the word Litchfield. If we look in here for Litchfield, it just says Litchfield because that's the value that is still on the server.
Yeah.
So I could use this to do with get modified fields. I know which field has changed. I can grab the existing value that is currently on the server and the value that I've just changed it to. So what my audit log could show is not just the new value that I changed it to, but the existing value and the new value. Because the issue with this is, if I want to know what this was previously, I'm going to have to go and search for another log record backwards that is on this same record in the customers table that has a different value in here. Okay.
John, could you not do a diff of the two and then just write the log of both entries? Or have I just stole your thunder?
No. Well, the point about this is we're all just starting to play with it. So the question is, how do we then kind of make use of? So we've got a tool which will do some things, but it's up to us to feed the machine and decide what it is that we want. FileMaker, Claris have given us this script step, which will do a thing. The question is, what should the thing be? Should it be logging the record when it's new, only logging if it's modified the old value and the new value? It could be different things each time. I've written down a few suggestions, be interested to hear kind of just from seeing that other people's ideas. Things like, well, this script doesn't have to even create a log record. It could just create a connect flow. It could just run a connect flow because we now have a script set for that. So if you're in a record and this record is in anything to do with accounts and you change a number, then rather than logging it, it should immediately push it to your accounts package, for example. It doesn't have to be logging it locally here as an audit log. If you have a system where you have sensitive files that are GDPR protected and somebody downloads one, then you could be sent a notification that this particular user has just downloaded this bit of information. They may be legitimately allowed to do it. There's no reason why you have to be logging it as a record of data in a table. You can just run a script that does an action. And obviously there's a whole bunch of other things that I think you really could be looking at doing here. So the other thing I was just going to point you to was those other clever people who clearly don't have enough work to do at Beeswax. Alec Gregory has gone down a very deep rabbit hole on the Beeswax blog. So if you go and read Vince's thing about perform script on server with callback, next to it, there's this post about making an audit log. There's a demo file, which I can just show you. So he's logging. Let's go to the last record. In here, let me just change that number. And I go to the transaction log, the last record in the transaction log. I've just added that to there. Okay. He's also got a schema log. So if I just go into the schema, and create a test field. So I've changed the schema. Then the last record in here I haven't done anything to trigger it yet, so let's just take those off, trigger it, as well as a transaction log in the last record showing that I removed the 2 zeros. The schema log has now changed. So somewhere down here, I should have, if it's turned on, the change to the schema that I just made as well. That's their demo file. That's a very long and deep blog article, but absolutely worth looking at, because that just shows that, again, you don't just have to be logging field information, field data. He's also grabbing schema data and then splitting it out into two separate logging tables.
Could you put a link to that in the chat, please?
I will just copy and paste that now.
Awesome, thanks, John.
So go to the chat, paste that there. There you go. That's it working. Any questions from people? Thing you want me to go and try and break at the same time in the way that Mark did?
Poke it with sticks now.
Yeah, absolutely.
John, I like your idea about the OData thing, going to use that to fetch what the current values are before you commit and then see the changes. But is there a reason why you'd go for that over the execute data API script step? Given that doesn't work.
Yeah. Should we? Thank you, James, for asking that question as if I'd primed you. Let me just find the steps.
Because that doesn't. The reason I ask is that doesn't provide an overhead in terms of the number of call, like your OData usage and your data app usage is. No.
So okay. So in that same I've got to do this in the on record commit step, which happens before the on window transaction step. Okay, which is on the layout. So here I am running the execute data API.
Can't see your screen, John.
Or we can see.
Oh, is that one of those? Is that a ridiculous dialogue thing, or because I clicked? Sorry. Just let me stop share and reshare. It's because I clicked into the chat.
Yeah, that's better.
Can you see that now? Okay. Yeah, so here's the execute data API. The layout is the client layout, and I'm just grabbing the first record. Okay. As a simple query. So I'm on the first record. I'm going to change. I'm going to get rid of those Y's from Litchfield. Okay. When I click off, I am going to see a dialog which tells me what the data that this script has just gathered is before it goes on to the on-window transaction. Click off. So it currently says Litchfield. It did say Litchfield with lots of Y's. There we go. It says Litchfield. It doesn't say the old value, because the execute data API step, that has already, as far as the local client is concerned, been committed on the local client. The reason the other bit works is because it hasn't yet made it to the server. Therefore, if you query the record on the server, it hasn't yet been changed. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
To follow that.
Yeah, although you could use a PSOS script, couldn't you, to run that execute data API set, and then that wouldn't then use against your.
Correct, but if you turn on the timing of the difference between running it PSOS and running it with OData, the overhead of going into PSOS, running the startup script, setting up a layout, setting up a user session, blah, 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 and before it's done anything, to do a tiny little thing to then come back, makes it, I don't know, even if it's 3 or 4 or 5 seconds, it's 3 or 4 or 5 seconds you really don't need when you're literally saying, I know what the record is, I've got the unique ID, just give me back that data from there, you do a filter, that's dynamic based on which the modified fields are. So I get back a tiny amount of data as well. So I'm not kind of burning my data. I don't burn my data allowance anyway, but.
This is really, really cool. I've got a little bit of a concern about this in terms of one of the reasons we use FileMaker is that it manages a huge amount of stuff for us and which makes things much, much easier.
Yes.
And we're kind of heading into areas where we're discussing things where we now need to manage what's on server, what's local. And FileMaker doesn't really give us a complete tool set to do that. And I don't necessarily think it should, but we're just kind of treading into areas where we're adding complexity that can make things more difficult. I appreciate that there's things here that are really, really good. And in some areas will make things easier, but we do need to be careful about this and how we use it.
I agree, Ian. The issue is, however, at this stage, let's see how far we can stretch a few things. Because we'll discover some things that the Claris engineers didn't really understand or work out what we really wanted to do with it. For the first thing, what this does do, it provides a method of getting the existing value and the changed value for all changed fields. So if that's what you want to log, a JSON object saying this field has changed from X to Y on this date by this person on this layout. So somewhere you need to grab the layout name and the script name. This will enable you to do it. If you just want to literally, as in the example with Gary, just go back a few, literally just what did I do? That's the simplest logging that FileMaker gives you for free. No details. There you go. In that table, you deleted those records. In that table, you deleted those records. There you go. That's, for some people, that's enough. The question is, well, how far can we push it?
Yeah.
Can we make it work for us?
I think the way you initially described it probably summed it up quite well, where you said it's a liminal area, and those are the kind of areas where people find new uses for things and explore things in different ways. So yeah, very interesting.
I was wondering, sorry, I was away and I was still listening to John talking. I was hoping to give an answer, but I'm very confident that using a self relationship would get the previous value. I know it would not be ideal because you would need to create a self relationship for every table, but
should we not be doing that stuff?
Yes, we shouldn't. we definitely shouldn't. But just saying, out of curiosity, that basically, if it worked exactly as the on record commit works, that would mean that the relationship that is being evaluated by the server would not return the uncommitted value, similarly to how execute FileMaker.api and execute SQL works. So it would give the server value. If you really had to do that.
Yeah, the takeaway is that the layout script trigger fires first, then the onWindowTransaction trigger fires, and then the data is written to the server. But it's almost like it happens simultaneously. The last two happen simultaneously. So before the window transaction trigger has had a chance to fire, you have a chance to interrupt it with a layout level thing, which therefore means you have control over whether it works on all of your layouts, because it means you have a script trigger to put on all the layouts in the file. Whereas the onWindowTransaction will work on every single layout, unless you say, oh, and please don't log this from this specific.
Yeah, it's quite nice. What I'm thinking to do as a prototype for that is use MBS. Christian has a nice asynchronous curl function. So if you pair this up with an MBS function that asynchronously from the operating system sends a post to another server, so you don't end up writing all this log data in your FileMaker database, you just outsource it in a big database that you don't care how big it becomes, and you use MBS, or I can't think of another way to do it asynchronously, but I know that Christian offers a function that can do that asynchronously. That would be great, because essentially the window transaction will just asynchronously post to another database the log data.
Well, if you go back to the very beginning, this is when a transaction happens, run a script.
Yeah,
it is not about creating an audit log in FileMaker. That's one of its uses. You have a packet of data and a script. Those two things can do anything you like. So if you want to be pushing it to Postgres or MySQL or wherever, who cares where the data ends up? So you might, so the whole point is, if you're doing like Gary, high volume transactions, don't be logging it in FileMaker. You'll be running Redshift or something, or Amazon Q for all of that data, which you can run from the script. Here's a data packet, here's a script, put those two things together, do whatever you like in the script. Doesn't have to be and end up in FileMaker. And I think that's one of.
I was just going to say, and I think, John, I think what Ian was alluding to is I've just logged onto our bot system and our nightly process. I've raised this before. We change over 16 gig of data in a single script step in the cache file in FileMaker every night. So 16 gig cache, it balloons to that level. You think about the amount of transactional data I'm moving. If I was to put transaction login on that process, I dread to think the size of the file at the end of it. I think this is something you've got to be. I think it's absolutely great. It's super powerful. It has so many uses. But I do come back to what Ian has alluded to, is you've got to be careful where you turn this on, what you do with it, and what you log. I think there is a reason why FileMaker has gone, we'll give you the base level of information because you go break it, we're not going to break it for you. So yeah, I fully get that and I understand that. So you just be mindful of what you're doing. I like the idea for the logging of key data records on our database that runs all of our website. We've got obviously triggers and our own ways of doing logging of some of the key data, price being one of them. So if someone goes in and does a replace on the price and puts everything as a penny, as soon as they hit that commit, the server's going to resync the entire website. So now everything's available for a penny. I want to know, I don't want to log, I want to pass that information. If that ever happens, it goes to Slack, alarm bells go off, the web team pull the website. I mean, it's huge because we'll just sell out in seconds. So they're the things I can see of this would be really powerful for us. And we would look at this and go, right, there's 10 key fields in our table that we do for our syncing to the website. Monitor those. And that's it. Create an audit log and create a monitor for that. That's perfect. And that will serve its purpose. But I wouldn't hold it. It will be a transactional log, so we get notification instantly at the point something happens. We've got some of that ourselves with our own logging we've built, but this will be more efficient. And I think I love the idea of what you're doing with the OData, John, because it's that point of I can fire a really fast, quick transaction. I don't need to keep it. I need to verify it, make sure it's within parameter. If it's within parameter, I could delete the record. I don't need it anymore because it hasn't met the criteria to be a warning. So my point, if there's a £2,000 statue on our website and someone puts it up for a penny, it will start selling.
Let me know when you do that, Gary, because I'll be buying it.
We had it. We did a Pokemon gift set thing, which we got from the supplier. We had a limited amount and we put it on cheap, and someone forgot to put the live stock. We sold over 1 million units in one night. It went mental. The entire Pokemon community came to our site, crashed the site near enough. But the point is that happened and we have to go and tell people, sorry, that was in error, we have to cancel it. We only had something like 2,000 of them. So the first 2,000 got it, the rest didn't. but that's what happened. So this is an alert system in the back end would be great. So I think this has got so much potential, but I do take Ian's point. Be careful.
And just to say, is the feature only does one thing. I mean, you can do whatever, but basically it's grabbing a bit of information just to help out, and it's bringing it that it, unless you use it, it just basically goes into, it disappears. So it goes into this sort of JSON parameter, and then you decide what you want to do with it. So if you're not using it, if you're not using the data, it just basically disappears. It doesn't get saved in FileMaker. And if you look at the blog entry that we put on our website, it kind of tells you, and the example that we show of how to actually grab data from before and after the transaction. So you can do, but it's, yeah, like you're saying, is we just give you the tool and then you go and break it.
Of course we will. I think it would be great. I have already mentioned that, Doug, in the past. I think that it would be great if we had a checkbox on the layouts, similarly to how we have for enabling quick find, just for that script step. So if we need it, we could disable the onWindowTransaction on selected layouts. Like the checkbox in the quick find in the layout.
You just
Yeah,
get a heart attack.
but then you're giving it more work. The idea is that it's once it's actually doing that transaction, that commit, it just grabs the data and then does everything else. So getting to figure out whether it's on the right layout.
The other thing is, even though it's got layout in the title, it's working on the base table.
Yeah.
So the whole point is, if you modify a field on any layout, which is a table occurrence that points to that base table, then you're modifying the data at the base table level. You're doing it, you think you're doing it through the layout, and in a way you are, but obviously that can be scripted and you could have no idea of what your current context is because you could have moved somewhere else. It's not that you're clicking in a box and capturing typing. You can be running a script which is doing a million things. You could be on some weird layout. The minute you modify and commit the data at the base table level, that's when this fires. So while it says it's a window transaction thing, and FileMaker needs a context, which is, oh yeah, a window is the context. It's actually nothing to do with the window it's on. I don't think. I think it's at the database engine level. Soon as that commit is happening, it goes, oh, go off and do this then, please. Which is why the base table name is in the JSON, not the layout table name.
John, that field you got that was underscore data.
Yeah.
When does that populate in that context?
Let me just look at it. It is triggered by. I'm using a trigger field of the modified time field. I'll just share it. I'll just share the screen again a second and show you the calculation that's behind it. So it's this top bit of calculation.
Yeah.
So I'm triggering it from a modified time to update.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting the table name from the field name of this field using self, so I can copy and paste it. Then I'm doing an execute SQL to get the table name and the field name from the fields, FileMaker fields table.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm only including fields that are normal fields, and I'm excluding anything that's a global field that says it's a global. So I'm not picking up calculated fields, summary fields, literally just normal fields. And then I'm running it through that custom function where I'm saying, okay, that's the list of table names / field names, but could you just exclude those two as well? I can show you the custom function if anybody.
You could use get field with null input to make it even more agnostic, meaning you wouldn't need to use the field.
Yeah, it's just I was writing a quick demo file today, and that's a field I always have there. So this is the custom function. All it's doing is kind of it's grabbing a list of field names and a list of exclude names. It's getting rid of any blanks in the list. Using a while function. I'm kind of looping through those, getting the field name, turning it into a fully qualified field name, working out if it's in the exclude list or not, and if it is, then just empty it out. Then using the field type function, I'm working out what type of field it is, so that if it's a number, I can turn it into a JSON number or a JSON string, or I can work out what's in it, and then I'm building a piece of JSON from that. So there is a kind of recursive version of this on Brian Dunning. I just rewrote it today. I have a custom function which works out if a number is too big to be triggered as a number and should be a JSON string. But that's kind of effectively the end result of that is let's just go back and look at it. Is just a JSON object.
Okay.
Of the fields. So I could exclude all fields that got underscore in front of them, for instance. You know, that I'm in control of what field list I'm including / excluding to just build a JSON object. I just played with that because I wanted to rewrite the function. The point is that whatever is in there can be whatever you decide that data packet should be. So if you used get modified fields, you might choose to only show the field, the JSON of the field that has been modified, not the whole of the record. That makes sense.
It does make sense, yeah.
Cool, thank you. Well, you know, any other questions? I'm really interested to see, you know, I think I get Ian's point that, you know, interested to see over the next couple of months what people start to do with it as an idea. Well, could you add it? You know, the issue is it's not just about audit logging. When you change this data, a script runs and you have a data packet. So the question is, what do you want to do with it then? What are the use cases?
It's very useful to be able to pick up deletions. I'm sure something can be done with that.
Yeah.
Am I right in saying with the deletion, because of that non-commit thing, you can then actually say, well, when this triggers, you will get the record beforehand. They just wouldn't, and then afterwards it will just say the ID is deleted. That's it. So you could get from the server that record beforehand, all the data relating to it. Then you get the point of the delete. You can flag those two together in your JSON response, and then go, this record, all the data was deleted.
Yeah. So you could have a field. Part of your JSON structure could be, you know, previous, and that could go into a field, which is so the log says, hey, I deleted record ID 57, and here's the whole of the data that was in that at the time I deleted it, so that theoretically you could do a rollback.
Yeah, it's in effect that classic version control that you've had in Google for a while. But you've got to build it. This is the thing. Claris is struggling with this because we are tinkerers. We mess with systems, we write our own things, and how the hell are they going to know? When you go into something like Google, you're structured to the file options that they give you, and you either conform or you don't use it. So it's quite straightforward. You follow their lead and you use their tool, and it works, and you've got all the version control. We come along and we go, got 5 million different ways of using FileMaker. And no disrespect, poor Claris have got to go, well, how would you expect us to write and meet that as a control mechanism? So yeah, they give us a tool. It's up to us to write how we're going to use it and what we're going to use it for. And I think that's really good. Really cool. I like the idea of deletions though. That's really good because I've been stung with that before. We've had it.
Yeah, definitely. And the fact that using replace field contents, it aggregates everything. That's and in related fields as well, which is it's the first time ever introduced natively.
Yeah, it's going to make a lot of things much easier.
If you haven't read the blog on the website, we've written a long blog of how even like doing basically custom functions to actually track what you had before and what you have afterwards. It means that you have calculation.
Can you put a link to that in the chat, Doug? Please.
Yeah, that'd be really useful.
You can do a demo if you want as well.
John, your link didn't go in the chat, by the way.
Did it not?
No, I don't know whether it's because you was
no,
Zoom or whatever.
It's because I told Jul that I was going for a P, and so it's still set to. I sent the message to him, not to everybody.
Okay, fine, cool.
It's now in the chat.
Yeah, perfect, nice one, super.
There you go.
Thanks, John.
Apologies.
I'm going to have to all these toilet breaks. I'm going to have to edit out the video. I can't remember all this time. I can't stick that in YouTube.
Quick question, Doug. That link you posted, does that have the demo file attached yet, or is it a file that you need to build yourself?
It hasn't. I think we have an issue with the KB article to be published, but we're working on it.
Cool.
If you want it, I can. I need to get the guys to actually put it on the site. There's a bit of work here on creating the custom functions, but I think you can copy pretty much most of it.
So I'm just looking at it, Doug. What would be a really cool idea is if there's a button to, the script steps, to be able to copy that as FileMaker clipboard XML.
Yeah.
No reason why you couldn't, is there? So you create a script, you copy it as XML, you save it as XML, and that's what we could download. So that then so that we could then just copy and paste the script steps into a script rather than downloading a demo file. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, because that's how we used to do the starter solution in 19.2, and we changed it when we moved to QuickStart Experience. Yeah, good they know it.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Gary, do you want to move to the virtual bar now, or do you want to?
I've got one question for the group. Well, one bit of information for the group, just the last ditch. And yeah, we go to virtual bar, but I'm quite happy to put this on the recording because I think it's useful to people. Yeah. Just something to bear in mind, and it hasn't just affected FileMaker, okay, but it has affected many things. You're all using a Mac, and probably, I would imagine, the vast majority of you are. And there's this nasty thing called antivirus software that is now becoming the norm that we are all compelled to put on even when our machines are not vulnerable. But if you work in a corporate environment, you have to follow that lead. Just to let you know what some of the antivirus vendors are doing now to get around ransomware, they're releasing add-ons to ransomware as a service in the antivirus software. So we used one piece of antivirus. I'm not going to name names publicly on that, but we used one, and they launched an antivirus add-on to the pack. So what that does is the antivirus piece of software is putting a wrapper around the documents, the downloads, and your desktop folder. Okay. So what that means is it will treat as ransomware anything where another application, not you with the pointing device of the mouse, is writing to any of those three locations, and it will block it because it thinks it's ransomware. So you can imagine what happened to us when this all fired on. when we've got scripts firing off and downloading PDFs and writing it out to the desktop, and literally all your files stopped. Literally stopped. FileMaker couldn't complete the process because the OS had blocked it. So bear this in mind, because these days are coming that I think every platform, every piece of software on this planet is soon going to need an antivirus piece of software just to even turn on. So it's something you need to bear in mind. So if you've got anything, you talk about writing scripts and writing files and writing log files, and what we could do with this tool. Well, if that tool then chooses to fire an Apple script, which we do fire a lot of Apple scripts, we've got FileMaker to tell another program to then write a file and do something. The antivirus software is blocking all of that. Stopped it completely. Now, if you write it to a folder that it's not monitoring, and it basically what we've seen in all the software that comes out of the box, you can turn all this off within the admin console, by the way. We've gone and reconfigured it, and you can also, some of the antivirus softwares gives you the ability to say, trust this application that's doing this. So you can do that. But it's that point, do bear this in mind. If you're writing this anything for big corporates, you may find that FileMaker may stop working, and you'll scratch your head wondering why the hell it stopped. The user will get a warning. The user's best will to them are useless. They won't tell you what the warning is. They just complain the application stopped working, and that's what we had. But it's just bear this in mind. It's a known thing that's come about in the last couple of months, and it's really hit us. To the point we're lucky we've got a central command console for antivirus, and we're allowed to grant access for FileMaker and do things in certain applications and certain programs that run this. But this is causing a problem globally. I mean, you've got the problem with Photoshop doing stuff where you could do scripting in Photoshop to then go change and edit a file, open a file, edit it, resave a file. That process is another application decided to change a file on your system that happened to be held in the documents, the downloads, or the desktop. And the antivirus software just kill it and stop it, and just stop the process midway through its flow. So it's something to bear in mind. I just wanted to say it to the group because it's something that's been affecting us the last few months, and I've been scratching my head trying to work ways around it. And I'll be honest, as a feature, we turn most of the feature off, because it was just safer to do that than try and put an exception through. We couldn't get the exception for FileMaker to work. And also for us, because we run so many third-party scripts, from a point of FileMaker will then fire another program to do something. So we use FileMaker to Apple script to fire another third-party program. All of them are going to get blocked according to chain. So just something to bear in mind. I don't know whether anyone else has had experience of it. I don't know whether you're working in that sort of environment, but it's something to bear in mind.
Thanks for the heads up.
Yeah,
Definitely save me banging my head against the wall.
Yeah, you just literally wonder why a process has just stopped mid-flow. And all you get is the antivirus warning from the dialog box from the users. Now, if your users have been trained and know what to do with that, great. But I almost guarantee most corporates, most users haven't got a clue, and they press OK to any box that comes up. Doesn't matter. It's going to say it's going to blow your machine up. Okay, then don't worry about it. It's fine.
Does that also cover temporary path?
No. Well, this is the thing, and this is from a build point of view. At the moment, and I don't know why I sort of understand it. The sensitive data that if you were in a ransomware attack is going to be in your documents folder or your desktop. They know that's where the user is going to save most of their data. So they put a bucket around that. So yes, if you're writing all these things out to temporary, you're fine because it won't monitor that folder. It won't even see it. So it's just, as soon as that antivirus software kicks in with that feature on, it's usually those three locations: desktop, downloads, and documents. So if you're not writing to any of those, you're okay. Predominantly. And this is in 2 or 3 antivirus programs that we've been susceptible to this and seen this. And they all seem to be following the same standard path of those 3 locations.
What if you used hidden folders?
I would imagine the antivirus would still see it, because if it's within that folder, the antivirus has full system level control. So it can see everything. It has to function.
That's all very well going forwards, Stackis, but we're thinking about existing systems here. So if it does that to existing systems, we're a bit stuffed. We don't want to go redefine all the targets of where we're going.
And I think that's the valid point. I think now we've got to be mindful of what we write, and how we use our data and our systems. We have to be mindful of what we're doing with that data now, because 10 years ago when we wrote a solution, writing a file to the desktop was perfectly fine. To be fair, that was before even FileMaker gave us a temporary path, so that was the only option you had. So that was always the way of going. I would say now, if you're building anything, always write a temporary file path, because that's going to be on a Mac, that's going to be buried in the var folder, and that'll be fine. You'll be perfectly safe there. I doubt it will monitor that. It may do in time. They may elevate the privilege set for this, like malware and ransomware options. They get around the point of ransomware because they're monitoring to see if they're getting a lot of changed files, which is what a ransomware attack is. It's going to start encrypting files, it'll block it. I think it's brilliant. I think it's going to save a lot of issues, but at what expense? So it's just, we're in control of our applications, luckily. It's easy for us to write a piece of code that says write to the desktop path, because FileMaker gives us that, so it's fine, brilliant. So grab the desktop path, but if you're writing to the temporary folder, you can't leave it in the temporary folder, so you've got to write it somewhere. So now we, as a solution provider for whatever we're doing, we're going to go, right, we'll deploy FileMaker. So it's a bit of a headache for us if they've got this on. It's doable, but you go, right, we need to create a working folder for this solution, and that working folder is going to be at the root level of the user's folder. Now, you can get an Apple script on a Mac to go create that folder at launch and do all that. But if you do that, that's going to get around this problem today. My point is, will it get around the problem tomorrow? Because tomorrow it may be the whole OS is blocked this way. And I don't think they can. I think if you look at the way Apple's built their operating system, they've ring-fenced the user data now in the format of the drive from the system data. Now, I can see this going forward, that the antivirus software won't be allowed to write to the system version of that volume, because Apple will stop you. It'll stop it. It'll just go, you can go look at that bit. You can't look at this bit. This is ours. And you can bugger off. This gets worse on a Windows machine, by the way. A lot worse. But do bear it in mind, it's something we've spotted, and it's certainly something that's rearing its ugly head now. And I think we're just going to have to be mindful of that. But do bear that in mind. If you try and write a file and you keep getting this error, you can't get the file out of it, it's chance it might be an antivirus piece of software that's stopping it. Fine. On that note, I'm happy to stop the recording and we just keep it open. That's fine.
I officially thank those who presented. Doug, Mark, John, thank you very much.
Yes.
For your input and your efforts there, and for everyone who's joined in and talked. And yeah, let's wrap it up there. I hope everyone found this meeting useful, and look forward to seeing you at the next one. And I will just plug Rosemary's questionnaire. Please all fill it in if you would, because I know she posted it in the chat. It's way back in the chat, but try and find it and post it. I've answered it. There's a couple of good questions in there.